The Duxbury City Council meeting on Monday, October 9th. If everybody could join me by rising for the pledge of allegiance. If you please lead us, I would appreciate it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll, noting that Councilmember Alday and Senator Dallas will speak.
Griffin. Here. Hubbard. Here. Michelle's.
Present.
Platt.
Here.
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 Rudy.
Here.
Keating. Here.
Thank you. Item C on the agenda this evening is approval of our meeting minutes from the City Council meeting of September 25th.
I'll look for that.
Second moved by Griffin, second by Sonero. Thank you both. Griffin, do you have any comments?
I did not.
Mr. Sonero? Good. Anyone else? Comments on the meeting minutes? Okay, please call the vote to approve the meeting minutes.
Hubbard. Yes. Michelle.
Yeah.
Griffin. Yeah. Senator.
Yes.
Platt.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. Minutes are approved, thank you. We have no prearranged participation this evening. So we're down to non-arranged participation. Let's start, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak this evening? I would. Okay, please step forward and state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Thank you. Name's Jeremy Haley at 2250 Melbourne Ave. I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of what happened, the front page article. I'm actually would like to see the nuance order in place. As the city gets bigger, you're gonna need to put more things in place to kind of keep order on things. As the city gets larger, you're gonna need to do things. And do it, you have to do it for all the city, not a special one. It has to be all inclusive. All right. And speaking of Avalon, has any of you went to the homepage and read the mission statement? Any of you? Let me read parts of it. When we advocate for housing quality, we dismantle the systems that marginalize and oppress people. We change our community for good. So what do they mean by dismantle? I mean, did that start have a system in place for where we're marginalizing people? I'm marginalized, I'm low income. By the way, the Walkabout Creek's been around has a program for 27 years. You guys never had to think of anything, do what you're thinking about or had to think about with them in 27 years about the management people. Let's go to the equity part. We amplify great voices in our workplace and communities we serve by cherishing differences. But the next thing is disrupting the status quo, demanding change, and measuring our impact in these areas within and beyond our organization. What is disrupting the status quo? After they say, before that, they say cherishing differences. Aren't they contradictory? This is their mission statement, people. And going on, Avalon Housing will champion our vision for equity, in particular racial equity in the organization and in the community broadly. How? Have they come in and said, hey, this is how we would like to do things, or this is we're hearing? This is people, this is all about behavior, not about race from the community, okay? Behavior. I'm on the low, I have the same thing they have. You don't see me doing the same thing they're doing. It's about behavior. And it says, we'll commit you to continuous learning, being true tellers and role models, and measuring our impact as an anti-racist organization within the Avalon housing workplace and beyond. Have you read the book or heard the book, How to Be Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi? The real name is Henry Rogers. And basically says, to be an anti-racist, you have to be a racist. And the first thing they do to you in this article is mention race. That's what anti-racist people do. The first thing they do is, I'm not anti-racist, but you are. Oh, I didn't say nothing. But they're assuming you are because they're anti-racist. Okay? We will be intentional and mindful of the presence of racism and its insidious nature, and will constantly assess our work through this lens. Boy, what are they looking at Dexter like? We're looking at you as anti-racist lens and saying, hey, it's all about behavior. Their strategy, establish policies and procedures that reflect our vision and commitment to equity. Support public policy efforts that promote diversity, inclusion, and equity. Actively seek collaborations to reinforce and encourage focus on diversity, inclusion, equity in the organization and its collaborators. Have they done anything like that with you? Saying, hey, we're having these issues over here. Have they come to you at all? So what can Dexter do? Wasn't it nice that Dexter allows, hey, come on in, welcome. Have you seen any of them in town? All I've ever seen live right next to them. Both Baker left 94. Both Dexter and Arbor, both the Z 94 gone. Are they participating in the community at all? Okay. And it's like we bring kindness, respect, and integrity to all our interactions. Are they treating you guys like that? Are they treating Dexter like that? How can they say this on a webpage? Everyone is empowered to guide their own lives, and everyone has a responsibility to respect the needs of the community and their role within it. Where's their role? Understand, this is their words. Okay, I can keep going on. But you people need to actually read this and read into it, read between those lines. Okay? And I'm gonna go, that space over there is inadequate for them. They need a bigger green space. The next Dexter Garden is a nice idea, it needs to go. The business next to them is probably waiting for a process server to walk in his front door, hand on paper and say, here's a lawsuit for some kid who twisted and busted their knee running down their property, who got stuck in a mole, who damaged his knee for life. How would you like to be that business owner? Dexter Gardens need to go. We need to put in some kind of basketball court, green space where they can go basketball, soccer, baseball, spot where they can set up some picnic tables so they can actually get out. That space is too damn small for them, sorry. Okay? I've been there. It's inadequate. You know, I don't know what else to say, but it's the behavior that you guys need to address with Avalon. And get off this race and economic status. I just found out, I just got a score of 806. And I'm low income. All my other scores are high 700s. How can I do that on low income people? They should come ask me, what have I done to get where I've done to pay off all my bills, to get to a part where I can actually buy a house and stop renting. It's not about economic status. It's about the behavior and what of the people who they want, what they want to change themselves. Okay. And you got to remember what Dr. Martin Luther King said: "Judge me by the content of my character, not by the color of my skin." This is what this organization is not doing. Okay? Those people for economic status, I just like to confirm, I don't know if they're encouraging the women to have relationships when men move in, but there's a systemic problem in the Black community of fatherless homes. And I've been hearing things that they don't allow men to be with the women in the evenings. So is this organization perpetuating a systemic issue we have within the Black community of fatherless homes? That's something that has to be asked. I've heard it around, but I'm giving it to you, you should check into it, because that's true. This organization is doing everything it shouldn't do, and the welfare system benefits off of a woman, single woman, doesn't matter race or color, maximize average 3 kids that gain maximum benefit out of the welfare system. And if they encourage women to be single, so it keeps the maximum benefit higher. Okay? Then from information is out there. No, it's just needs to be looked at properly and addressed correctly. Not through race and economic status, it's behavior, and if they want to change, they can do it. But if this organization has their thumb on people, keeping them down. I mean, if you're a single woman with a couple kids and you're dating a guy, you can't live with a guy. How many of you can afford 2 homes, okay? How can a person in my status, low income, afford 2 homes? They're forced to do that, so therefore they're gonna be in that system forever. Okay? This is how the system's played, and the system plays them. And they play the system back, because the system's playing them. It's a wicked system, all right? I see it all the time. And I just like to end with that, I wish you all well, because there's issues gonna be needed addressed, it's there. But at least I like to see the kids get a proper green space, especially for the older ones. Give them some other activity to do than what they're actually doing. Okay? Because that's the best thing for them. Lease the land to them for $1. Have them sign a contract saying any and all injuries occurred on the land is your responsibility, no liability of Dexter over your butts. Okay? Do something to help those kids out. Put that first foot forward and say, look, this is what we're gonna do for you. We see that you guys need more room to do these things, and we're gonna do that. Are those people in the gardens gonna be upset? I just say, welcome to DIE. People like diversity, inclusion, whatever, equity. That's what it is. People are gonna have to give up some things, so other people will be included. And they're here to stay. And if went over my time, I'm sorry, I feel for the people there and you guys, because everybody's in a tough situation. I see nobody talking to anybody except trying race and ethnic status, behavior. They need to come and engage in the community. I don't see how the community can go there and engage them. We all can't fit there. They have to come to us. And as long as I've been in Dexter, I haven't been, oh, look where we're all the time. I get looks. A lot of it purposely stand downtown by the light or on the other side of the corners and stop and stand there and say hi to people, engage with people. You know, that's what they can do. Say, walk down that town with the kids, say, hey, I live at Hilltop. Dexter's a great town. It's great to live here. So and so. Do you see any of them doing that? They're all high talent. Avalon has broken the family ties that these people had and moved them to a town far away and expect things to act normal. They're heading back to those broken family and friend ties. Because they don't feel welcome. It's not that they don't feel welcome here. They have nothing here. So they have to come out and try to make something here, like I did. Okay? I know Dexter is welcoming. You just, I say, put first foot forward, make the effort, and give the green area for them. Give them a proper play area, little picnic area, stuff like that, and see what they do. And if they talk about race, and that, no, it's not about race, but if Dr. Martin Luther King, it's about the behavior of people that live there. That's all it's about. Okay, and I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Stephen.
It's the least I can do for you guys, because nobody else is being honest with you, really. You know, it is.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak for the non-range? Josh, is there anybody? I see a hand up on the left. I don't know who that is.
It's Kyle Moore.
Okay. Do it, unmute Kyle. Kyle, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Kyle Marsh, 7820 4th Street.
Good evening.
Evening. Thanks for let me speak here. Just a quick thing I have. They included the whole presentation in the packet, so there's a lot of goodies in there. I got a little carried away on the Baker Road thing, but I think there's some good visuals in there. I also read through tonight's packet and looks like Marcus did a good job of kind of going through it, answering questions. Potentially there may be some occasion to change the striping to a little bit skinnier stripe, which I think is a great idea. You know, there are still some things which I mentioned which are unaddressed, and I mean, I get it. It was a little bit late on the comments. I probably should have been earlier with these so that they had a better chance of getting into the design, but I do think there are some general kind of things worth considering as we go ahead. So I think it's worth reading through the packet anyway, even if the design ends up passing as is, which it sounds like may be a timely issue in order to get the grant money. So worth discussing when you get to that item. But generally, I mean, even if, you know, the major thing is that crosswalk that doesn't align at Forest, and I know it somewhat shortens the walkway across, but those misaligned crosswalks are just they're kind of a slap in the face of someone who's trying to walk around town and be a pedestrian. They're just like, why? I know it's shorter, but and to one at Forest, we have to change that curb anyway. So is it that much different to get it lined up? Anyway, the rest of the comments do make sense. I think, you know, changing the colors to match on Central isn't really part of it. Because it's just the shallow milling. That worksheet for the roads was very helpful too. So it looks like we have a lot of road investment coming up. So potentially as these other ones come up, it may be worth, you know, thinking about these designs and just making sure that, you know, we're getting them just right.
Thanks for sharing your ideas, Scott.
Thank you. Okay, have a good meeting.
Thank you, sir. Josh, any other hands up there? I don't see any from here, but. I have no other hands on. Okay. Oh, please. Welcome.
Thank you, David Lutton, Lee Road, Scioto Township. I watched with keen interest. I had a little trouble with the audio on it, but your work session of September 11th. Thank you for the energy and the time that you put into it. You correctly identified that what I proposed to you is a very complicated project. I specifically tonight am coming with two requests. One may actually be moot, but I'd like a pause in future meetings of the two subcommittees, yours and Scioto's. I'm aware that their meetings are scheduled at the moment. That may make my request moot. I'd like us to get the utility capacity study completed and have that for everyone's information. And I will confess to you that many months ago, a trip was scheduled not to pay away at second half. I'm not going to get it done next couple of weeks. The second request that I had is I've asked this of Michelle, and I saw in her notes and in a response to me that she will happily schedule a meeting between me and your subcommittee, not the Scioto subcommittee, but your three members and Michelle and me. This has been frustrating in that you've had 3 meetings and I don't get to make any input. And you've raised lots and lots of questions, and I respect those questions. At that meeting, my intent would be to bring, and this comes out of some of what you talked about on 9/11, bring some other housing design plans, site plans. You know, conceptual at this point, but, showing what else could be done, to meet some of the concerns that you raised in your working session. I would hope to, also perhaps bring more information about the well. I appreciate that what we have in the 2019 test that produced so many gallons and ran for 2 hours is positive, but it's not the final evidence that a well is possible there. So I'm trying to gather more on that. And I may have more information about a construction traffic easement, which I know was another of your concerns. I want to close with just a couple of comments. This is a big, complicated project with 3 distinct parts. I won't go into all that. You and the subcommittee and SIO as well have raised valid questions and issues. I have heard, and I heard the phrase more than once in your working session, the onus is on the developer. I agree. I also agree with Dexter can't be expected to take things on faith. There are a lot of concepts floating around in what I've proposed to you. I agree that the onus is on the developer, but I would also submit that you have a lot of checks and balances to control the developer as things go through the approval process. It is my intent, and I'll just say we're not in the approval process yet. It's my intent to take a site plan for residential development on the annexation piece through the planning commission approval process and ultimately the council approval process. David Lutton will be taking that through. Yes, I've said I'm not going to build the houses. I will be selling the approved site plan to a builder. And they will be governed by what that site plan says. There's your control of not having to take everything on faith from me. Many hands will soon be submitting their site plan and starting the approval process in Scioto Township. This Thursday, I will be meeting with the Land Protection and Preservation Commission of Scioto. I'm asking them specifically to pass a motion that says they're interested in what I've proposed to them, rather than what they passed at their last meeting, saying they'd like the whole piece. The whole piece isn't available for the 237 acres. They've known this since April, so why they passed that motion is a little bit of a puzzle to me. I wasn't at that meeting. I'd like to propose to you, so I'd like you to give Michelle permission to schedule a meeting with the subcommittee. I'd also like you to think about changing the process. It's 6 months since I made this 3-pronged proposal to you. You've had 3 meetings, and I can submit that we're not very far towards any kind of an agreement on annexation. I'd like Scioto and Dexter to think about an annexation agreement with contingencies, like a contract between the 2 parties. This would take some lawyering, but an agreement with contingencies. One of the contingencies would be that Scioto will purchase the 105 acres as I've proposed for preservation. It includes 90% of the natural features found on the 237 acres. Another contingency would be that Many Hands gets their site plan approved. And the third would be that I get a site plan approved through your planning commission and council. And only then would the annexation trigger and take place. I'd like you to think about that. That will clearly require some lawyers. It seems to me, the old business guy, that if we devoted November, December, and January to that task, we could get to an agreement and begin to move on with the other complicated issues of this project. Lastly, I'll just say, I'm real serious about trying to do this. I believe in diversity of housing. The reason I proposed 80 units for the annexation piece in the information you've seen was to keep calm in the land and not alarm the extra crossing, get people excited about stuff. A continuation of that subdivision is what I propose. Can we do better in terms of attainable housing for the community of Dexter? Absolutely, we can. And unfortunately, to reproduce Dexter Crossing homes today probably starts at 5.25 or 550 and probably runs up to 650, something like that. And those are not attainable houses for an awful lot of our population. So I'd like you to think about changing the tax relative to the annexation and see if the two municipalities could come to an agreement with some protections that if certain things don't happen, that it becomes moot. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for taking the time to come there. Do we have any other public comment? Okay, thank you to the three people that spoke this evening. We'll move on to item F on the agenda, which is a declaration of conflicts of interest. Anybody have anything to declare? Comments proposed? Okay, item G is the approval of the agenda, and staff has provided a couple of suggestions in the supplement to us that's on the table in front of everybody. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? There's a, we had made a motion on September 11th to have a public hearing today on the EDA development tax increment financing plan. And that did not get listed on the agenda. So in lieu of that, staff is recommending that we add that to the agenda just to complete our thought on our intent from September 11th. But then postpone it since, because it wasn't on the agenda, we'll put it on the 23rd, so that people have the proper notice and what have you, and able to make comments if they want to on that item. So if somebody who's making the motion to approve could make the addition of that to make that H1, where it would normally be on the agenda, and then we're not voting to take the action on, we'll get to it, we'll vote on that idea. That's the kind of staff is recommending. And then they also want us to remove this item M3 because the contracted partner of architecture is not ready and it's not a part of the packet. Joe?
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of item public hearing item H1 and the removal of new business item M3 as noted in the supplement.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by Scott. Thank you, Dan. Any discussion on the Zach?
I'd like to pull a K4 off. I just have a couple quick questions.
Okay,
And then a point of order, L1 and L2, although they were on the agenda last time, they're never before the table, so they should be new business. Doesn't change the order, just the detail thing.
okay, so K4 with M, I guess I'm gonna call it M5 for now, for after employee. Okay, please call the vote to approve the revised agenda. Yeah,
We're gonna do L1 and L2.
no, I'm gonna keep them right there for now. I understand that.
What will come to business or
Yeah, we can show them where
we should.
I actually asked about that question of Justin, about they should, and then we postponed to go to unfinished. Was the thought, I didn't, I don't have a problem. We'll take it to whatever was on the agenda. Good, please call the vote.
Michelle,
Yes.
Fair,
Yes.
Griffin. Yes. Scott,
Yeah.
Hubbard. Yes. Kip.
Yes. Thank you. We have an agenda. So now we're down to H1, which would be the public hearing for to consider the updated downtown development authority development tax increment financing plan. Since we obviously didn't get this on the agenda, we'd like to now formally postpone that to the 23rd. So we'll be under item H next time. Yeah, motion to do
I'll
that.
move to postpone the public hearing to consider the updated downtown development authority development tax increment financing plan until October 23rd.
Thank you, David. Motion by Griffin,
Sorry.
second by Sandra. Thank you, Joe. All okay? Okay, any discussion on postponement? Okay, Jordan, please call the vote to postpone.
Scott,
Yeah.
Michelle,
Yes.
Sunny Pharaoh,
Yes.
Griffin. Yes. Hubbard. Yes. Keel.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for taking care of that. We have two communications in the packet, the upcoming meeting list, / calendar. And then the email. Slide presentation from kind of Marsh. Does anybody have any comments or questions on communications? Wow, I see here.
There is also a River Watershed Council board meeting on the 19th, but I'm completely not seeing it, it's not on the list.
What time is that, you know?
5:30 at the Russell.
Okay. Thank you for that update. Any comments on any of those there? Okay, we're into reports. My first report tonight is from our public services superintendent. Welcome, Tim.
Good evening, how was everybody?
Good evening. Very good.
Good. So we got a 2-week report. You guys need to answer any questions I can.
We're good. You get the fill balls ready?
Yeah, they're getting everything ready, yeah.
Okay, I mean, the leaf machine?
Yeah, the whole actually, both of them, yeah. Ordered some stuff too, snow pusher, new one, getting ordered for, between all 3 departments, so it's gonna work out to. But
Zach?
Question of the asphalt on the B2B trail. I've heard from a lot of communities that have the asphalt trails that it's really difficult to patch that concrete and get a smooth surface, so they've actually done the patching with concrete, and they're probably gonna go with concrete in the future, just for ease of maintenance. Have we been having similar issues?
that's my knowledge, I had to talk to Kurt on that, I don't think so, we haven't seen any problems, this went pretty smoothly, my understanding was. But I will make note of it.
The biggest thing right now is just doing an annual, boardwalk piece replacement of the top flat.
No.
So we're continuing to hydro flush, seems to be going really well. We were doing part of our potholing last week and we come across the galvanized line, which was broke. So we had to fix it and ended up going up and go all the way into the house as an emergency thing because it had to be taken care of, couldn't replace what we had, so.
What part of the community is that? What street?
Forest.
Forest?
Yeah. So, but it's, I mean, the timing stinks, but it's one more off the list, so, and they were extremely happy. They went from a 3/4 galvanized to a 1-inch copper, and the resident wife said the following day that she'd never had water pressure like that since she lived in New Dexter. So we're good.
Jim?
Or did everybody get the email about the free radar sign contest? October 1st? Is that a thing?
I think we got something about it.
This radar sign is giving away a radar speed sign. You have to create a 30-second video explaining why your organization wants one, submit it, and then vote. Are we in a situation where we want to spend the effort to try to get a free radar sign?
We have 2 already.
Get money and then
But that's
we'll make the video.
Yeah,
Did anybody see on the news that, they're doing a contest on water towers, and they had Dexter's water tower on Channel 7, along with a bunch of other water towers.
no.
I did not know.
Did they show the new lettering?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's what caught my eye, because I didn't have the volume up, and I looked up, and that's a long time.
Was it just on like how nice they looked? What was the competition?
I did not hear the whole thing, I just heard that, and having a competition throughout the state of Michigan, I guess, with water.
Thank you, appreciate the updates. I think Michelle is on vacation, but there's a written report, there's all one in the back. She's on. Oh, she's on that?
She's on that.
Oh, okay.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing?
Sorry, Michelle, welcome.
Nice to see, well, I can see you. You guys can't see me because the computer that I'm using doesn't have a working camera, so I apologize. And thank you for so graciously taking care of business to postpone the DDA plan amendment public hearing. I appreciate that greatly, and I apologize for dropping the ball on getting it on the agenda. So, excuse me, you've got my report in the packet. I am in New York. Yes, the babies are asleep, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's a lot of work. But I'm sure most of us remember that. Just a couple of the highlights. First, we have revised, excuse me, I'm sorry, the self-storage facility with the industrial flex space units in the front did get postponed. The Planning Commission would like to see that the items that need to be fixed on the plan are done before they pass it on for with conditions, if there are still conditions, to City Council. I have followed up with the applicant. He understands, especially the looping of the water main. That was a big one that was not expected for him. Excuse me. Good news, Eagle permits were issued before I left. And I got a thank you note from Eagle today. I haven't read the whole email, but they did thank us for getting it out. There is in the packet with my report, the exchange that I had with Mr. Lutton, answering his questions regarding the subcommittees. Excuse me, excuse me. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to talk with you about that. The Pelham preliminary PUD, the revised one, has come in, and it will be on the November Planning Commission agenda. Since Planning Commission already conducted the public hearing, we made sure that the plan has already been posted up on our proposed development webpage. Being that I am out of town since this got prepared, I don't have a whole lot of updates for you, but if you've got questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions for Michelle? Jamie?
Hi, Michelle, it's Jamie. I wanted to follow up on the La Fontaine water drainage issue. You said you thought you might have an update for Monday. I'm not sure if you do.
I don't. I have not reached out yet to Justin or Marcus because I have been here in New York, but it will be one of the things that we follow up on when I get back in on Thursday.
Thank you.
I think Tim might have something.
So I gave him a call the other day, and then I gave him a call twice last week, and I got a response back. I was gonna wait tomorrow and give them another call. So I know the operations manager there, so we might let me go in and take a look and see what's going on. So that they have. I call them for a couple of times, so sometimes they both do.
Any other questions, Jamie?
No.
Any questions for Michelle? Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Have a great vacation. Thanks for joining the meeting.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any board commissioner reports to report on? Okay, we'll bump down to city manager report then, Justin.
The only verbal that I have is an update on the Spark grant. We were not successful in our Spark grant application. They haven't released, how everyone fared outside of, whether you got it or not. We just received notice that we did not get it, so we could see what the, you know, total scores look like for all the applications, but, outside of that, if anybody has any questions, they have to answer them.
Thank you.
I was hoping that you or Marie could just give like a 5-minute reorientation to this K3 item, the other post-employment benefits funding policy.
I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just, yeah, there's lots of words, but I think there's probably a gist there, and I just want to make sure I have the right gist.
Yeah, we're trying to find a way to, adequately fund other post-employment benefits without overfunding it. So, it was in front of you 2 meetings ago with kind of an arbitrary 120% of actuarial. And listening to council, I thought that, the suggestion of kind of tying it to the 15% fund balance was a good idea. So we changed it to 15% of the unfunded, or of the total liability, as kind of a benchmark of being overfunded. And then also, because council people wanted a certain amount of funding each year, that was added into. So it provides direction to staff for budget time as well, so that we kind of are comfortable with what numbers are being proposed for that particular benefit.
Thank you. So I just want to repeat that to make sure I'm understanding really. So you have a minimum of at least 15% over base of your unfunded liability, but you'd also be contributing at least $30,000 a year.
That would go towards.
Yeah, so it can go towards any basically elimination of the liability, whether it's paying directly into the fund or, you know, for example, if council shows that you go towards employee benefit buyouts, is there anything that would take that total liability and bring it down?
I guess I don't understand the need for the additional dollar if we're already, maybe I'm missing something.
So the purpose of the minimum dollar threshold, you know, for putting at least 30,000 in, is to make sure that we're still putting something in. Though should there be fluctuations in the market, you're putting those dollars in sooner rather than later, so you're getting a bigger bang for your investment. If council wanted to.
So there's numbers related, so is it at least 15% of the unfunded or 30,000, whichever is?
No, it's both.
It's both.
It's both.
I think I had expressed the concern, and the reason I'm almost closed was, in 2020, that they did the evaluation, we were underfunded. And then, you know, 3 years later, or 4 years later, 3 years later, we're overfunded by 30%. And that big swing, I don't think you should ever stop contributing to something. So my suggestion was to have a small number that we contribute rather than zero, and it was, I think, arbitrarily picked at 30,000, right? Just that's something to continue to keep it on the forefront of the importance of making sure we
And 30,000 is what percent of what we on average contribute?
do about 150 to, it's like 20% of what we would normally do. Round numbers.
They were doing it in 119, I think.
Okay, that's 25%. It's very familiar to you though, right?
Yeah.
One, and the other variable piece of it is the employee contribution.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that. No questions.
I think I also have questions on the speed data. On page 70. Thanks for including that in the packet.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
No, that's
So
right.
that I can,
So what's the speed limit?
25.
Okay.
I probably would like to see more percentages than raw numbers, but those are things that are probably calculating. Did staff have any immediate takeaway from this? Did they have time to spend? Or, I mean, I'm happy to take more time, because I just didn't know if there was something you wanted us to note here or.
Yeah, well, so, you know, the radar sign collect a large amount of data. And I believe it has pre-scripted reports that you can print off of it, which, this is one of them. I think the biggest challenge specific to that location is that it's going downhill. And so, there's quite a few folks that are, greater than 5, but maybe less than 10 miles over the speed limit. And, I think we've all experienced it going down Dictionary Road. You basically have to ride your brake in order to not be over. But I think as a percentage of those who are traveling through that location, those that are 10 miles an hour over and 15 miles an hour over are relatively limited. I think, based on that second to last column, the daily 85th percentile speed. And Marcus can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to do like a formal speed study of that location to, try and drop the speed limit or to reevaluate the speed limit, you'd likely be setting that speed at 35 rather than where it's at now.
Okay, I'll follow up with more specific questions. I just wanted to know that it was there. Thank you for it and sure.
And you got one more comment on that, and Ella can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's one of the locations that the sheriff's office spends probably more time than anywhere else is the Dexter Road.
The technical question, how does the counter account for cars that are stopped or nearly stopped? I ask that because at that location during rush hours, there's a lot of times when cars would be going under 5 because it's backed up. Does it count those, and is that going down the average, or does it say you're going too slow, I'm gonna ignore you?
I think it does count the car. And I mean, just based on the vehicle counts, that it seems like it has counted those folks. But it's only going to denote in the furthest columns, the last 5 columns, if for the 3 of the last 5 if they were keeping it going over the speed limit.
I think it's interesting that the fastest time period is all afternoon. That was one thing I noticed. Maybe that's not surprising.
Or people are in town.
I don't know if you could discern whether you're going uphill or downhill, maybe I'm missing something on it.
It's based on which direction it's pointed. So in this case,
Are we capturing them?
it was folks coming down now.
Oh, to set them up. Got it. What's the difference? Oh, it's fine.
And there was, a minor noticeable difference between what was on and what was off.
I mean, I think the point about cutting outliers and like understanding the full distribution would really better help understand what these averages mean.
And my takeaway is there's certainly cars that are going over the speed limit. I don't think there's any denying that, that confirms the observation, right?
Correct.
Okay, and it's a little bit subjective to pick which column you want to focus on. I don't know, whether 5 miles is too fast, or 10 miles is too fast, or 15 is really fast, over what the number. But there's certainly numbers there that are counted going faster, and if you were watching, you could probably tell here's a train, somebody going 25 versus 40. But I don't know how to, outside of enforcement, I don't know how you staff it. I do think it's an interesting observation that what Justin mentioned about the, I don't know if this is qualified as a true speed study or not, because you'd probably do both directions when setting the speed limit, not just one, and if this is all downhill, you're getting one version of that. But I mean, in the downhill direction, it seems like people are comfortable going, I would say over 30. Or whether they're trying, well, they may think they're riding the brake at 31 and thinking they're behaving because it's only 6 miles an hour over. And they may not be doing anything unsafe, but that is over speed limits. But I do think it's an observation, that if we did a full-size speed study, the speed limit could theoretically go off. It would not. Do not think it's the objective. Through town.
I can see residents asking, you know, for enforcement, is there a threshold that is typically enforced or not? Because if they find out, oh, they don't typically enforce unless it's 15 or over, I think that would answer a lot of potentially questions, if they're like, oh, well, there are not that many going 15 and over, maybe that's why they don't see a lot of enforcement, but if it's 10 or over.
Well, and again, I think that location is one of the more dominant locations where the sheriff's office does targeted enforcement. But the more time they spend there, the less time they're spending somewhere else. And we do get, you know, complaints all throughout the city about speeding.
Okay, sure. Thanks for sharing the data. Something back in?
Only if there's no questions.
Okay, I'll move on to my report. I want to thank Josh and Justin and Michelle and Blah for attending to meet with the extra high school students back on the 28th. We had them here in this room and brought to ask a lot of good questions. We did the best we could to answer them, but thank you for all of you participating in that discussion and preparing for that. I did meet with Mr. Lutton a week ago and last Tuesday actually. And we talked a lot about the goals and just about the need to get, you know, more certainty in the data, such as like the well. He covered that tonight about pretty well. The goal of, you know, trying to verify that there actually is water there, and we understand that because we're not trying to make a decision based upon something that we're guessing at. But I do also think that it's meaningful to have our subcommittee meet with them. I think there's value in communication, that was the whole goal of meeting with the SIO subcommittee. I would hope that they would want to meet with them also. You know, ultimately, we have an application in front of us. And, you know, at some point in time, we'll need to make a decision, and I don't think we're at that point yet, but, I think we can learn through conversation and, anyway, I'd like to encourage the committee to meet with them and see what kind of ideas are out there, and maybe some more direct questions could be asked back and forth. Does anybody have any questions for me on any of that? Oh,
Can I ask about the meeting with the high school students? Just,
Sure,
can you, like, I guess I'm out of the loop a little bit, like, what was discussed, how, when, et cetera.
so I forgot the teacher's name. Do you want to call her name?
Callie, I don't remember.
Apparently, I'm sure that's.
Sorry, man.
She was asking what we're doing as a government to address situations where people have disabilities, whether it's learning, physical, or mental, I guess. And are we creating opportunities for everyone, both in during employment and function? We just kind of talked through as best we could what we were doing there, how, you know, the example of like having the study done on the ADA compliance of the parks. And we haven't implemented as much of that stuff yet, but we're mindful of it. We talked about the, you know, the rapid flashing beacons and making the community more walkable, as an example. Doesn't want to jump in and help me, but we kind of went around the room and there were like, I don't know, 18 or 19 of them. I think that if I counted correctly at one time. And they had to be back for the next class, so they showed up by bus, we unloaded, we sat down, they went through a preset set of questions, and then you know, left as quickly as they arrived, so. But there were freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, it was, yeah, I felt that I don't really.
It's fine, yeah, do it in, you know,
Thanks, Jackson.
but focus in the special education program along with, caregivers, both interested in nursing. Yeah, maybe peer educators.
Yeah. Perfect. And then, the October 17th meeting with, the Cub Scout pack, I just wanted to say that I appreciate you doing that. I think I was in that pack like a decade ago and I remember having you come and now I'm here. So I think it's a pretty valuable thing that you do. So
Thanks,
just be showing my appreciation.
thanks, appreciate that. I enjoy it, it's fun. Okay, anybody have any other questions for me? Oh, okay.
Hi, thanks for letting me ask a question. Sean, you asked the committee if we'd be willing to meet with Mr. Lutton. And I think it's important to know if what we would speak with him about, based on the information that we brought back to council from the township side. Having direction from all of council as to what the next step is the staff kind of feels like they don't really know what the direction is. So if you all could let me know, that would be helpful.
I think you could simply ask Mr. Lutton how he feels he could address the goals that we feel are important for the property or that we pointed out in our September 11th meeting. And I guess you guys could do mostly listening. I'm sure he would provide answers, and if there were natural questions, you could ask them.
I'm sorry, I should have been more clear. When the committee has met with the township, we followed the policy that's in the master plan, that it's it's something that happens mutually. Since that doesn't seem to be the case for the township, does council want to go against that policy? And if so, then we can start to map out how we do that with the township.
Well, first, I think it's in the city's best interest to explore the opportunity fully and learn as much about what the developer might be willing to do or not do and what options are out there. I don't see how that goes against our master plan. So I'm encouraging the committee to do that. I haven't set up one of those meetings, but that would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Sure.
So when Mr. Lutton was talking, I did a search for like conditional annexation agreement and came across conditional land use transfer PA 425. So we've talked about 425 agreement. Is that essentially, is the 425 essentially a conditional annexation agreement?
You're welcome. Okay, are there any council member reports? Then I will move to page 3 of the agenda and ask if someone will make a motion for the consent agenda. Remember that there are 3 items on there now, 1, 2, and 3. Please.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of bills and payroll amount of $823,827.79. Secondly, setting Halloween trick or treat hours for October 31st, 2023 from 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. and approval of other post-employment benefits OPEB funding policy.
Motion by Senator Farrell, is there a second? Thank you, Dan. Okay, Georgia, please call the vote to approve the 3 items on the consent agenda.
Well,
Yeah.
Griffin,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Sunny Pharaoh,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Hugh.
Yeah. Motion carries, thank you. We're down to our unfinished business, discussion of the ordinance regulating the use of engine compression brakes. This was postponed from last meeting.
Well, I guess I'll start. So this item was, initially, worked by Nicole covered. There was quite a bit of information provided along with the draft ordinance from the city of Chelsea. Staff took a crack at, putting together a draft ordinance, just, we're pretty close to word for word from, what Chelsea had. I know that there have been complaints of, noise issues, especially along Broad Street and Baker. Just based on, from compression rates. So. Brought it forward for council discussion.
So what's the penalty if someone gets caught using the things? $100. But that,
$100.
does that generally deter them? I'm gonna call on Officer Hunt.
We write some of those tickets in other areas. I can't tell you, to be perfectly honest, if we write the same people again, or just the people who's fine, but
Okay,
I know it's a big deal over in Lodi Township, and so we can write those tickets from time to time.
thank you. Put you on the spot. Appreciate that.
It's all right. Sorry, here.
Don't.
Yes.
Sure, yes, that's what I'm thinking.
On the enforcement for that, is that like speeding where you set out and you say, okay, we're gonna check speed? Is it like you go to a location and say, okay, we're gonna see what the traffic's like, or is it just incidental of the course of?
Generally more incidental, because we don't have the staff to sit and just look for a big rate issue.
So I understand.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Jamie?
I had a couple thoughts about it. So resident contacted me back in May talking about specifically mentioning folks with the super noisy exhaust driving up and down Main Street, making as much noise as possible. And then, so keeping that in mind and then thinking about some of the other literature information about these ordinances where it seems like it's a function of an improper muffling system and not just the use of the brake itself. So, and then I think even Watt had said, maybe this is something that's taken care of with our noise ordinance. So that's why I asked to have it included in our supplement. I guess I can find people to decide that I asked for a couple of things to be included in there. So the first one, recognizing, yes, that the information is coming from Jacobs Vehicle Systems, the people who develop these quote Jake brakes. And they have some suggestions like, don't actually mention Jake brake because that's the brand name of these brakes. And also saying, take this a step further and you're actually talking about unmuffled engine braking that is generating the noise. Then it goes back to the noise issue. So then I looked at our noise ordinance and section 18-61 says it shall be unlawful for any person to create, assist in creating, or continue any unreasonably loud or disturbing noise, etc. But then, and then it kind of defines what that is. It shall be presumed that the noise is unreasonably loud or disturbing when, or to operate any such device, blah, 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 more than 50 feet from such device. So I'm not quite sure that there's a clear definition of what is unreasonably loud or disturbing. But then it also says in section C, relating to noise emanating from a motor vehicle. So, guys, I'm curious to know if what we have already in our noise ordinance addresses what the root of the problem is, which is just loud mufflers in general, recognizing that there are other complaints about those. I don't know, I guess, and then the last thing I included was that the city of Ann Arbor actually recently directed their police to no longer pull drivers over for things including loud exhaust. So, I don't know, it seems like there's some nuance to this issue potentially, to make sure that the action we're taking is actually getting at the root cause and having the intended effect.
Yeah, I was concerned about the under section, section X regulations. Or we sort of give a reprieve to the emergency situation, assuming it's emergency vehicle.
Yeah, it is not specific to
Oh, okay,
emergency vehicles, it's that kind of, there's an emergency.
okay, I guess I was reading that differently.
Like if they have to slam on the brakes, kind of thing, like,
That, so I see,
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
stand up, yeah.
which, I mean. I would like to have an exemption for the fire department.
I think that, yeah, I think that was appropriate, but,
Yeah, I'm assuming that's what he's,
yeah, Doug, do you have comments? Can we unmute Doug? Josh?
Yeah, good evening. You guessed it. The exhaust brakes that we use on the fire trucks are critical to the safety of the braking of the vehicle, and are something that we don't really ever turn off unless it's really icy weather out. And so to have something where we had to remember to turn it off in a certain place or on in another place would be really problematic. And speaking to the article that was submitted about muffler, obviously our mufflers are in full compliance and designed to work with the braking system, such as to minimize that noise. And you know, we've never gotten any feedback from anyone that our trucks are a cause of concern from a noise standpoint. So I would just ask that there be an exclusion in there that allows emergency vehicles to operate their exhaust brakes, not just during emergencies, but just anytime the vehicle's operating, because that's just the way we drive those vehicles on a day-to-day basis.
Thanks, Doug. So what's the restricted area, I mean, maybe operator in the restricted area of the emergency situation? Really get that first thing, when you read that.
It'd be any, so if, assuming the ordinance is applicable to the entire city of Dexter, then the city of Dexter would become a restricted area.
That,
So two of the emails in here, from Savages and Camps, they're referencing roads that are outside our jurisdiction. I hope that the staff would contact them and let them know to contact Scioto Township. Has the attorney reviewed the draft yet?
No.
Okay. I raise a couple of questions. I am a big fan of trying to be as quiet as possible. I'm spending a bucket load of money so that I can do work with power tools and not disturb my neighbors. The concrete was poured this morning, so 7 to 14 days is coming back down. We already have noise ordinance, and so I question how this will be different. If the main thing is not the technology, but whether or not the muffle system is in good repair. So I actually engine compression braked as I came in the parking lot here. I've got a manual transmission. You let off the gas, it slows down, it pulls a vacuum in there. You can never hear it except for when my reverberator chamber on my 2009 Rabbit went out. And then when I would pass through 2,200 RPM, it would sound like an Italian car, which is really cool because it's but it was annoying. So I guess my question would be for staff, do we have the necessary tools already in section 1861? And if, don't need answers now, but these are things that have been going through my mind. If this is adopted, who is going to be enforcing it? Is it the sheriff department? Do they have the resources to enforce it? Because with expectation management, if we adopt this and we put the signs up and it's not enforced, the people are going to be more miserable than they are now because they're expecting we did this thing and nothing's happening. And I know we can put the signs up and say we're going to enforce it by bluff because someone's going to see it and they're going to turn off the Jake brakes because they're paying attention to that before they hit the roundabouts. But we also have a bridge that's too short and it's really hard to miss that. And we still get a person a month who runs into it. So there are a couple of little detailed stuff in there, but those were my big thoughts.
thank you, Zach. Either of you have a question? David?
Yeah, I just want to conclude by saying I'd like to have a better understanding of our existing noise ordinance, and I think we're waiting on a revision of our entire general code. Is that true at some point? Before too long?
That's something that we should take a look at.
I don't know if that's scheduled or not, but I would like to understand this better before doing something else that maybe could be addressed by this, and if we find that this is not sufficient, then I think I would be inclined to make a change to the existing noise ordinance, given, for example, that other residents are reaching out about just loud mufflers in general also.
I would say that section 1861, if our attorney sees it, he's probably gonna say, you have to rewrite that. It would be, from my experience, there's no decibel standards in here at all. So what's reasonable, what's unreasonable? I love when I lived in my house, we had an 85-year-old who couldn't hear, so we could be rocking all night long and she didn't care. Now we've got folks who can hear there. So I would suspect that the attorney sees this, we just generally may have to refresh it.
So, put this on the back burner until we get to the noise ordinance? That's on there. Postpone it until a certain point, or what direction should we give staff? So,
In general, I would, be in favor of the ordinance. I think there's a reason a lot of communities have those signs at the beginning of their cities, and, that it can be an issue, regardless of whether that's because of maintenance on the vehicle from another portion or not. It's, if you don't use the Jake brake and you have bad muffler, you don't have those either. So I understand the concern may be other equipment failure, but it's not an uncommon thing. It's very common for this type of thing. And I'm not sure anybody is designating, as was stated earlier, I don't think anybody's designating, aside from specifically for like state police for vehicles that specifically target trucks, but, or monitor trucking. I don't think anybody does that, so, but see them all the time, and they're obviously bothering people. So I think that having the signs and having some portion of truck drivers turning them off because they know that they can't do it versus not having a sign at all. I mean, worst case, if we said we're gonna keep it, do update the current noise ordinance or the current noise ordinance applies, then we should post signs that say, per noise ordinance, you know, you're not allowed to do Jake brakes. But if somebody has their vehicle maintained, then, you know, it doesn't seem fair to them in that case, because they're not creating any noise. So it seems like you just say no Jake brakes, then you don't have to worry about the situation with vehicles, so.
I agree with that, on the signage, regardless of, you know, which ordinance it's falling under, but, the one thing I don't, we can't put Jake brakes on there.
Well,
We have to put, yes. It's not fair to that company, they didn't do it.
They do suggest, so if you look in the supplement, they suggest unmuffled engine brake use prohibited except emergency, max fine $500. So I guess I would look, if I were to give a direction to staff or suggest one, it would be looking closely at that. And it seems like, I thought there were links to other documents they had for sample ordinances, but I think we definitely can make some revisions to what we currently have. In addition, either way, I would like to see the noise come back to us sooner rather than later.
Do we want to have to work with our, our attorney to compare section with the 18.61, is that what you said there? To the, if there's any comments there, really?
I'm fine with that.
And then bring that back from before the meeting too, or?
I just don't want to comment. I didn't read through that carefully if it said specifically unmuffled engine braking or however that's turned out. That would cover the fire truck and then also, so it'd probably be a better wording overall.
I was gonna say that the thing I like about that muffled approach is that it would also apply to motorcycles with straight pipes, which I find even more offensive to the higher pitch. I have no opinion of that.
Well,
Yeah, we'll take that direction.
okay. So move on to our second unfinished business item from last meeting, discussion of the draft 2024-2026 transportation asset management plan for road improvements.
So, been working with OHM, based on council's approval to develop a 3-year, road improvement plan that incorporates a wider variety of, maintenance, types. And, through, OHM, we've used the RoadTalk platform, to help us identify kind of the breakdown of what types of treatments are appropriate based on our PASER rating for our variety of roads. And basically, RoadTalk comes back and says, you know, you should use X miles of this treatment, Y miles of this treatment. And once we have that, we work with OHM to give a first crack at the list of roads that would be appropriate to fall into each treatment type. You know, that the long-term goal is to increase our PASER rating and increase the overall quality of our road network, incorporating, you know, different dollar, you know, potential grant dollars, the TIP program, and our roads millage. And I think we've come up with a solid plan. We're looking for feedback, to see if council has any suggestions or recommended changes. But, Marcus, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I got a couple things. I'm gonna bring Stacy Montague is here with me as well. I'm gonna bring her up in a minute to step through the actual recommendations themselves. Which is a little more background on the process. So this is a formal approach. The state of Michigan passed legislation in 2002. Initially establishing an asset management council and requiring certain asset management tactics to be utilized by road agencies. There's been various, like 4 or 5 bills since then that have enhanced those requirements. As it stands right now, the legislation only mandates the road agencies that have 100 miles or more of road do this. That said, this is a good process for road agencies of any size. So the draft report that you have in the packet there is modeled after, based on the state guidance. Although it's not required yet, we're expecting more legislation to come, which will expand that. So this does put the city in a good spot when and if additional legislation is enacted, that you'll already be compliant. Along with that, having an approved plan in this format is the city additional flexibility between our major and local road funds. So you can basically, if you've done the plan, you've done the network-wide analysis, you can move as much money as you want between the 2 funds. If you don't have an approved plan, there's things at 25%, a maximum of the major road can be transferred to local streets. So there's benefits for financing, additional flexibility there. So just real quick on the process, sort of that we go through here. The PASER rating system is the windshield survey. So you drive all the streets in town. There's criteria for the scoring. 10 is a brand new road. 1 is a failed road, potholes, almost impassable, and then everything in between. So we've been doing that for a number of years. So we have some good history on that data. We did get fresh ratings this spring. After that data is collected, we meet with staff to talk about the types of maintenance activities that the city wants to consider. We assign dollar amounts to those. And then we get the financial information, what budget's available for capital work, and put all that into the model. And then as Justin mentioned, the model makes recommendations based on the condition of the road, the roads that you have in the system and the available treatments. It says you should do so much of this and so much of that. That's the raw output of the model. We then take that raw output and basically temper it with reality. There's economies of scale if you're in a neighborhood of doing, several streets that are closer together. We know that you can't just ignore a street in bad condition forever. So even though it might not be the most cost effective from a whole network standpoint, you do have to do the more expensive reconstruction projects, which the model may not make those recommendations. So we tweak the raw output, and then start looking at, based on how much of the different maintenance activity that's recommending, where does that fit in the system? That's pretty much what we're gonna have Stacy present, kind of step through. And if you want to put, Josh, you want to put page 196 or the packet up on the screen, that might be helpful. That's the map, the color coded map. And the page before that in your packet has the Excel table. Stacy's gonna run through those projects. We are looking for feedback today. We think this is a good plan. If there are any tweaks that we need to make to it, we want to do that so that we can get this finalized and published, and also so that we can start putting a construction bid package together for the 2024 work. Because we do want to get that out on the street early next year to get good pricing. So with that, we'll have the map there on the screen, and they shall turn it over to you to kind of step through the recommendations.
All right, so the recommended projects for next year's construction year in 2024 is gonna be in red. So we're recommending 1.5 inch mill and overlay of Wilson Court, both north and south, Ulrich Street and Ulrich Court. 2.5 or 2 inch thick plus a SAMI mill and overlay on Wilson Street from Ryan to the dead end. That's gonna be similar to what we did on Dan Hoey this year. A 4 inch mill and overlay on Forest from Baker to Kensington, as well as over from Ryan to View. Microsurface, all of the Dexter Business Park streets. Slurry seal on all of the West Ridge of Dexter subdivision. And then the mill and overlay of Baker, which you already are familiar with. And then each year the city budgets for crack seal and saw cutting, so those sidewalk saw cutting, so those are included as well. In 2025, that's gonna be in green, 1.5 inch thick mill and overlay various streets in the Dexter Crossing subdivision. 4 inch thick on Carrington Drive, 2 different sections there. Pulverize and reshape 4.5 inch overlay on Hudson Street from Main to Cottonwood Lane. And then again, the crack seal and sidewalk spot. 2026 will be in pink. 1.5 inch thick mill and overlay of 3rd Street and 4th Street. Mill and overlay 4 inch thick of Alpine Street around the corner to the farmer's market. And then a 5 inch thick mill and overlay of Main Street from Central to Mill Creek. Full reconstruction with a curb conversion on 5th Street from Central to Dover. And then again, crack seal and sidewalks cutting. Also, there's a public parking lot that we would do a mill and overlay of. That was kind of added after discussions with the team.
So for for the first year that's on there. With Western versus the industrial park, one says, or maybe it's not the industrial park. One says, microsurface, one says slurry seal.
Yeah, they're very similar processes. The chemistry is a little bit different. The process train for microsurface isn't really very well suited for windy subdivisions. The equipment, the train is too long to be efficient. The other thing is microsurface does have a little bit more of a structural component to it than the slurry seal does, so it's typically used for major streets in the or industrial traffic. So the same companies do both, but just because of the specifics of the application processes, we recommended slurry seal for the western sub and microsurface for the business park.
Okay, and then the microsurface of the slurry seal is called out the first year, but there are no projects for the last few years that do those type of treatments.
Yeah, so this is the 3-year plan. There are some considerations for that type of work. You need to have enough to make it worth the contractor's while, basically, and to get good unit pricing. So the reason that it's front loaded in the program is because we want to catch those streets before they get past the condition that's appropriate for that. I would expect to be looking at another round, probably in year 4, maybe 5, when we have enough other streets that are in the range for that. So it's only in the first year of this 3-year plan, but I would expect when and this would essentially be updated annually, or at least before we get through the 3rd year, but I would expect to see that similar type of work in coming years as well.
Okay, thank you.
And Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, in year 4, 5, 6, likely the next round would incorporate a lot of roads that we have recently done. Central Street, Hudson, Grand, Park Acre, potentially Dan Boyd, depending on which year we do it in. And like Mark said, I think the goal is to have enough of those roads that treatment is appropriate for.
One other question on the crack sealing. How many, I know it's variable, but about how many lane miles out of 40 in the city do we expect to do with 20,000 per year?
So I think we do 10 lane miles a year-ish.
With the 20,000.
And crack seal is the cheapest treatment. In talking with Kurt, the amount that we're budgeting is an appropriate amount for what he believes the appropriate roads are in each year to be crack sealed.
Dan?
I see in 2024, we're looking at a mill and overlay on Forest Street from Baker to Kensington. Did we think about pulverizing and crushing that and doing an overlay on that? Or is that more expensive?
It would be more expensive. There would be, obviously, when we get into actually preparing the bid package for these, we'll get more refined, and there may be spot areas that require a full depth repair. We typically put quantity in contracts for full depth spot repair, undercutting if we hit a soft spot, et cetera. So there will be some of that, but the overall road condition, and based on the pavement cores and the overall road condition, it's in the right stage of its life to just get the cheaper overlay. When you pulverize, then you got to put, at least 4 inches of asphalt back.
Right. I'm kind of just looking back on the road on Forest, and if we don't get rid of the cracks are real here. But you gotta stay within your budget. I also noticed in 2025 that you're gonna pulverize and reshape Hudson Street with a 4.5-inch overlay. And I didn't know what the difference was between the Hudson and the Forest. Forest doesn't have a lot of curb and gutters, so it seems like it'd be a good place but you're saying it's a lot more money.
It is, yeah.
Okay. And the same with Fourth Street, I know Fourth Street's gotta have 10 to 12 inches of asphalt on it. I don't ever remember that being, milled or anything. Anytime you do that, there's an inch and a half mill and you put on top and the cracks just show right through pretty quick. Thank you.
What's the logic behind the curb conversion on Fifth between Central and Dover?
So that section of road is, has the gravel parking lanes. There's been historically issues with encroaching on the alley. There's been some signage put up. It's relatively flat, but there's still with it, those really wide gravel shoulders, there's, been some erosion issues. So that there's been a little bit of, I guess, discussion about when and if to curb streets, and we've been selective about it, because it is more expensive. But there is storm through there already too, for a section of it. So, it was basically to clean up with the proximity to Central in the downtown and the way that the parking gets utilized on there, so to clean up that section and have it a whole with paved. With parking.
Have you asked the residents living along there if they'd like that or not?
Well, my two cars were parked in that side parking there. I don't have frontage on it. I oppose curbing except for when it's absolutely necessary. I believe it significantly changes the character of the road, and there are lots of other options. But I have a question on page 192. You could pull that up. Well, my question is, should Third Street between Central and Broad be considered, let's turn the right here, a critical asset? I ask that because it's the truck route connecting north of town through town.
Yeah, the part we just did.
Yeah,
What page of the report is that? I know it's 192.
28. 3 risk of failure in houses.
Yeah, I think you could definitely make a case for that.
Right, and I don't know what impact that has, but it seems it's kind of characteristic of the report for that road.
Yeah, I mean, basically, that's just one of the components that the state, that's in the state template to identify critical, but I think that makes all sense in the world as that.
Well,
That category.
my next question on, it's page Roman numeral V of the report, or 164 of our staff packet. It looks like despite our millage and all our efforts, that our roads are in worse shape in 2023 than they were starting in 2018. Well, my big question, and you can explain it simply, I'm an idiot, easier for some folks here, imagine that, but how will this plan get us to our goal on the far right when it looks like 2018 to 23 is gotten worse?
Yeah, so it actually, what's in the report now, was the rate, so we started this a couple months ago, so the Dan Hoey road project wasn't done. So it will be, we've updated the figures when we get the final report. Your condition distribution is a little bit better than what you're seeing there. You have such a small system, just, so I think the Dan Hoey project represents 11, just the two ends that were in poor condition that got repaved, not counting the middle section of the school, represents about 11% of your total major road. So one project, and you can see big swings with one project, on a system of this size. So, the other, I guess, answer to that, is the figures that the financials that were utilized for this analysis. The city was recently based on the updated census information, they're gonna be changing the type and amount of federal funding that the city gets. So on average, previously you kind of had to save up 3 years worth of an allocation and might do a federal aid project every 3 years or so. You've been getting, funds every 2 years, so those figures are in this. And in addition to that, there was some, other bonds that are getting paid off. So there's additional funding beyond what's historically been spent that's available for future years. So there's more money going in. There's one answer, and the strategy of doing is much catching the lower cost treatments. Doing we're a little bit heavier. The city's always has been proactive with maintenance. I mean, done surface seal in the western sub once, Dexter and Arbor, obviously. So it's been done in the past. This particular plan is a little bit more loaded with those preventative, which keeps those good roads from getting worse and expensive.
Well, and to kind of build on that, you know, we did go through a period of years where we focused on those preventative maintenance projects. But to Marcus's point earlier, you do still have to address those kind of larger dollar reconstruction and kind of more intensive projects and central. And so we've done that over the last couple of years with
Green Street, Bacon Road, I mean, the big money stuff came at the end.
Yeah. And so now we're kind of turning back from, okay, let's go back to the smaller dollar, stretch that further, low impact project, not low impact project, but maintenance focused projects. Knowing that we've spent our dollars on some very costly projects in the last couple of years.
And to that end, I would be supportive of even more of the crack seal. Or most cost efficient, 7,000 per lane mile, if I remember correctly. Like I mentioned, I live on Dover. It got the crush shape and overlay 10 years ago. It got crack sealed once. Between now and then, there are more cracks, and I didn't take the picture because it was already dark when I came here, but there's grass growing out of spots where it has been crack sealed, which probably means water getting through. So I would like us to use the cheapest one as much and more frequently as possible. That's it, thank you.
I just have a couple, I think, very basic questions. So do all fixes, I'm guessing not, do all fixes get a road back to a 10 or no?
No, so the convention with the Pazer 80 is the only work that resets it to a 10 is basically a full reconstruction. Any, so mill and overlay would just reset it to a 9.
Got it.
And go down from there.
And then the logic again behind not only going after all of those in the 4 first is because you're trying to maintain the light of some in the yellow.
Yeah, so the reconstruction projects are 4 to 5 times more costly roughly per square yard than preventive maintenance, depending on what it is. It's a lot more than crack seal, but so if you can keep, when you're looking at it on a network level, if you can postpone a reconstruction project, you can do 5 times as many miles of maintenance. So following the program with the maintenance activity and doing the overlays as soon as possible to keep those roads from dropping down is the strategy, and then you try to pick away at those expensive reconstruction jobs as as you can. But yeah, it's definitely depending on the specific process, it's 5 to 8 times more cost effective to do maintenance.
Alpine is listed as not till 2026. I guess I drive around the city a decent amount. That seems such a bad stretch. Is there a reason why that makes sense to wait so long?
This is where it kind of fell in the budget, I guess. There is also you know, it's a relatively short stretch, it's a lower volume street. I know for the people that do use it, on a daily basis, but,
I kind of just figured like the library and the farmer's market and a few people traveling in from out of town and, you know, or just what it looks like there, but yeah, it's slow stretch, that just.
I agree with you, I think that one is it there. Okay, so the process here is to bring this back for some type of adoption at the next meeting, is that correct? That's good. Great.
Yes, I have a question for you. You know, with the flow of federal funding coming down, are we going to be punished for being proactive, like we've been punished with sewer and water, not funding because we're doing the right thing?
I mean, there's always going to be certain funding mechanisms that favor communities that have not done a good job. So I can't say that, no, that might not happen. But the actual small urban, road funds, the city, which was previously the surface transportation dollars, they could switch over based on the census, to the small urban program. That's a fixed amount for all communities. So, Dexter, Chelsea, Island, I think are the only three in the county. But it changed a little bit. It's about 385,000 for 2 years. So that funding, there's no indication that that's going to be, that you'll get less than anybody else because.
Well, but are there opportunities if our roads are in bad shape? Are there opportunities with the current approval of that infrastructure bill that they did? I don't know how it all started. I mean,
Yeah.
Major Ray's kind of saying, you know, hey, our roads are allowed to be, give us more money.
We work with OHA to keep a pretty close eye on possible grant opportunities for roads and, right now they're really, outside of our normal, federal allocations. There is a lot. We do, every year apply to the, Transportation Economic Development Fund, program for both, major and, local.
I guess what I've seen, I haven't seen road funding specifically tied to how well you've done managing your system, but there is a lot of road funding that is associated with disadvantaged communities.
Which I know we're not.
Right, and that's not anything
Right.
you can do anything about.
It's
I
just-
haven't seen where anybody's missed out on a funding opportunity because they were managing their network.
I was just wondering, like, if, you know, as you're looking at things and looking at a budget, you know, if those funds are available, would be better off to put off a road or put off something to try to get those funds. You know, because so many millions of dollars were left on the table for communities that were proactive. I guess that's my point is in the next year, is it, you know, is it better not to be as proactive and try to get some of that money?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
And then I'm assuming that years 4 and 5 will focus back on here in farms again.
That's likely, yes. There still will be a section of Carrington and that's not done yet, and some Lexington that may be. But yeah, I think it's probably pretty functional.
What page is it? Where's the map that shows the ratings? Is that actually in?
No, I don't think it is. So there was, so
Could we get that?
you can. We did, yeah.
I'd just be interested to see where the twos are on the trees and them. Overall, we've got.
There's a map that breaks it down by 4 good.
It's all that, yeah, it's not 3 colors, but I'd like to see the.
Yeah, the one we had done last time had the actual rating number on each segment, so we'll generate that again without the updated info. I should put in a ticket to, okay, do that.
Any other questions for the team? Okay, thanks for your hard work on that. Appreciate that. New business item number one, consideration and approval of, or approval to proceed with final submission of Baker Road plan.
I'll move for approval of submission of the, or to proceed with the road design with the following changes. The lane widths be reduced to 10 feet except where necessary for accommodating the horizontal curve at Baker. That the crosswalk connect the sidewalk on access, so straight through. And the crosswalk as concrete similar to downtown be included as an add-on option for the project. And I throw that out there for debate and I'll share reasons why.
Okay, so the first one was 10-foot thing, right?
Yep.
I heard the third one was the decorative crosswalk.
And then crosswalk goes straight through.
Okay, so on an angle, just to follow the, not perpendicular traffic.
Correct.
A second.
Then that's by Jamie, thank you both. Okay, Bethany.
Just
Yeah.
make sure I'm clear. For the decorative crosswalk, you're talking about the crossing of Baker and Forest, not side streets, okay?
Yep.
So make sure I'm clear.
I guess since I threw out all the conditions, I'll have the owners say, preparing why. So, when I was at the planning conference this last week, we sat in a presentation of, the reconstructing. Everyone who's been to Traverse City, think of the road between downtown and West Bay. That road has 40,000 vehicles a day cross it. It's badged as M72, M37, US 31. It's gonna be the first time it's been reconstructed since 1950s. They're building it with 10-foot wide lanes in order to manage traffic. We have significantly fewer than 40,000 vehicle trips a day. It's one of the most powerful things to slow down vehicles is to give that tightness in addition to cars parked on the street and trees next to it. I did share, and I'm not sure if it got passed along, but apparently now, and I'm not sure if this has changed, but FHWA does for arterial and collector roads in urban areas, which Dexter is an urban area for transportation, allow widths of 10 to 12 feet for those roads. So, and I just did this fun little thing in front of the post office. The lanes now, the travel lanes are 14 feet. My car is 13 and a half feet long, so I can park my car through there. So that's why people are comfortable going much higher. The other item, the crosswalk continuing straight through with the sidewalks instead of doing the jog at the angle. So this is just rough math. If you do the angle that's shown in there, it's roughly 48 feet to cross. If you continue it through, it's 62 feet. The rule of thumb is that the average person walks 5 feet per second. So the crossing time goes from 13, roughly, if my memory is correct from my math earlier today, down to 10. And that is good for the pedestrian. However, in order to walk, to get to that, if you're coming westerly, you have to go an additional 40 feet. So you've added 8 seconds there. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot of time, but for folks who may have disability or have a stroller or a kid in a wagon, having to do all those jogs adds time and adds stress, and it tells them subconsciously the car is more important than you are. And if we want to encourage folks to walk, we have to make it easier for them to do so and let them know that we designed it with the intent to make it easy for them to do so. And the reason why I want to include the concrete crosswalk as an add-on is that that's the main entrance for most folks coming into our town is from Baker. And we've added them on Central going the other direction. Whenever you change the material like that, it's also a very powerful signal to the folks in the car. You can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it as you drive over it, and you start to build that muscle memory that something has changed here. I have to go slower. And those are my thoughts.
Jamie, you seconded it,
I would just like Zach to tell me, or point to where in the package, the second point you made about the crosswalks crossing, so I can visualize that better.
It's good luck, man.
Yeah, so instead of going at the shallower angle, it would connect straight across. So if you're walking on the sidewalk in one direction, you're gonna keep going.
Great. Was that one tile?
Similar to what Kyle said, yes.
Yeah. Does it do anything?
It's not generally the practice though. I'm not trying to play engineer, right? And usually you have the crosswalk perpendicular to traffic. Not on an angle.
We've also talked, when you're on Forest approaching Baker,
In which way?
the issue, I never know directions downtown, but if you're back at the creek,
Okay. So,
going like towards what it gets.
okay. Thanks.
Where just the stop sign relative to the crosswalk. We talked about that a couple of times, so that crosswalk, or the stop sign at Forest and Baker there is, you know, on the opposite side of that crosswalk. I don't know if that's something can be addressed there.
So two clarifications on the crosswalk straight through, is that like page 25 in the packet? Which is the,
Is that Kyle's thing?
yeah,
Want to check before I say, because I know he wanted to put a lot of crosswalks in. Yes, it doesn't include the changing of the curb radius, which I would also like to do, but that's bigger than the scope of what this project allows.
so you're saying that where he says extending the curve, great idea, is not in the project.
Correct.
And then you said, and I apologize, I just wanted a clarification. We say lane 10 feet wide. How are you saying we do, we paint that or move the curves out or?
No curb touching, because when you touch curbs, that's really expensive. It would be the center, the 10-foot lanes in the center, and then there'd be like a 4.5-foot buffer space. Bike lanes would be 5 feet, right? So it technically wouldn't be a bicycle lane, but it would function the same.
For something that's not technically a bicycle lane, could you do like a Sharrow type of a thing?
Well, the problem with Sharrows is then, I mean, you could do that on a 14-foot lane, that doesn't accomplish, I think, what's being discussed here about having a narrower thing that's, so. If it's not up to the standard width, no, we would not put pavement markings identifying it as a bike lane.
I see.
Could be actually patching every 15 or 20 feet. In that. And so, to make sure I understand this, are you asking for the center turn lane also to be 10 foot? Okay.
But I also very clear that where you hit Baker Road, that was excluded. You have to make them wider for the turning geometries of the truck.
Right.
You mean where it hits Main Street?
Yeah, where it starts the horizontal curve.
Well, where it goes away from the center turn lane.
Yeah.
How wide is the road in front of the post office? We talked about it.
Well, the parking from the face of the curb to curb, you have 9.5 feet for each parking, 14 for each travel lane, and then 11.5 for the center turn lane now. Yeah, I'm that nerd who did that.
So it's just striping, so it's easy from an engineering standpoint to make these changes. I'm happy to do whatever version council decides on. But I will just let you know, because it is federal highway, it's administered through MDOT. They're gonna have the final say, I guess, on whatever we submit. So I'm happy to submit whatever is agreed upon. But it is possible, because you're right, the standard does allow that range. But the 10 is the absolute minimum, and if you have a road that's wide enough for 11-foot lanes, which is more common, and you're striping in that area, necking that down, I'm just not sure if that would be approved or not, but we can sort of submit it and see.
Staff can get you I would suspect the applicable sections of our master plan that say we want slower traffic and people to walk downtown.
But I wouldn't recommend going less than 11 foot on the center turn lane, just because if those are narrow and you have a bigger vehicle, or just a little bit safer, if you have the road, have the center turn lane, it's a little bit wider. So I would recommend
Would you allow from the men 11 foot center turn lane?
10-foot travel and then whatever is left over for that. That's all. So
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm okay with it for sure, yeah. I'm okay with the friendly amendment. But I'm. I don't like the angle. Crosswalk, I think that's. Opposite the safety thing, that we should try to road, just the shortest distance across the road, right? I don't mind if somebody spends 8 seconds back on the sidewalk in there. There's some difference of opinion, I guess, but I think it should, everywhere else in town is perpendicular. And the idea that you would be in. Well, that doesn't make sense to me.
It comes on Baker if it helps you. Are not necessarily, we have, or on Ann Arbor, they're not all perpendicular because the streets do come at quite angles.
That's something like that, that's some,
Yeah,
well, it's pretty perpendicular, it's not. It. One further second. There.
I think this is related to what you're talking about. If you imagine leaving like the Bates School parking lot and then where we have the rapid flashing beacon with the island thing there. As a runner, it is not intuitive at all to me to turn right, even with a stroller walking, to turn right and then cross into this curved thing and then cross back. I mean, I will cross every time. From so where that driveway exit across, straight across the street. So I feel like there is a tendency for a pedestrian to do what is intuitive, which is to proceed in a straight line. And I think even if it's safer or recommended as something shorter, I think when you have something that is slightly off, I think it just invites people to do the thing that they naturally want to do.
You should be setting a good example by using the space.
I understand, but I do, I was watching, we had recording this. The thing, it feels very awkward. To do all that jogging right across that street, it does not feel natural.
If we listen to residents talk to us about behavioral changes. We're promoting the behavior that we want, not encouraging. That.
well, and to that end, we had this phrase in urban design of, we design spaces for people, not for engineers. And engineers are people, but there's a very specific way of thinking, and urban design, we try to use the forces of how people naturally behave as much as possible. So if it's aligned or fully straightened, maybe 85%, 90% of the people will go through there, and all the motorists will think that's where all the cars are gonna be. Then you get that 10 or 15% of the people who cross there, and you've created a significantly more hazardous situation because they aren't expecting it at all. Now, bad on them for crossing, but we've also tried to push the river upstream there.
That it's like proposing a crosswalk between the Pub and Acton. We could do it, but it's really a dumb idea. I mean, people are gonna come out of their cars across the street. You can't stop people from doing that. doesn't mean it's right, or that the roads are too long, or that our design should be consistent, and the goal for a long time has been to create short crossing distances. The island that Jamie referenced on Baker was specifically requested by the school district. And then through the Safe Routes to School program, it was determined that that Z shape, if you will, or in sense, whatever it is, it's so that you enter the roadway and then you turn so that you could see the cars coming in the next lane that you were gonna cross. That's the logic behind it, so you were constantly viewing. I don't know, I asked, and maybe I missed it in here, are we doing a rapid flashing beacon at the crosswalk at?
Not in the, plan currently, no.
Okay, well, if we're gonna do an alternate, I'd like to do that as well. If we're doing alternates for crosswalk enhancements, which I like, I don't mind crosswalk enhancement with concrete. I'm gonna favor that, I'll do now for years, but
Does the NDOT bid letting program allow for alternates?
No,
or if you could do 100% not
Yeah.
participation, not participation items.
you could do that, or you could. It doesn't really have a mechanism for allowing alternates, what we'd have to do is put it in the plans. And then if the city opted not to do it, we just take it out of the contract, we just need to be mindful. Based on our estimate, where, because there's thresholds where if you take too much work out, then it kind of opens up the whole contract for renegotiation, so we would need to look at total dollar amounts to see. And also, there's, thresholds that you can't surpass based on how the project was programmed, so it's in the tip. You can go a certain percent over what's currently programmed with the final estimate. And then there's a certain percentage that the bid can go over the engineer's estimate before it triggers a whole bunch of other rules through the MDOT's process. So we'd have to look at those numbers pretty carefully. The crosswalk, decorative crosswalk obviously isn't probably something you wanna come back and do later. But the RFP would be an example of if we can't fit everything in, that's a subcontractor anyway, it's an electrical sub, it's 2 foundations, there's solar power, so there's no power or anything, so that'd be something that could be easily done if the city wished to have a separate contract after the fact.
That's true.
We'll have to look at those figures, just kind of play that game and make sure we're not jeopardizing the whole project. But I'm happy to do that.
We had, I might be wrong, Dan, you can help me, you've been around a long time too. We had 0 crossings in Baker 20 years ago. Dan Hoy and Main Street. Right? Now we have 2. One at between the schools. And one at south of Grand. Is there a number? People think we need
Every leg.
every lake? I think that's excessive. So you're saying, so at Hudson? And then Forest, there were 2, in your opinion, were 2 deficient then?
And so I'll raise the question of, on Ann Arbor, where we only did it on one side of the intersection. The logic of that is there's only one spot where voters have to pay attention to pedestrians crossing. The reality is, if you're going across, now you have to cross 3 streets. Now you've tripled your time. And again, there's high encouragement for folks to just go in the spot where they're not expected. Well, I think if we truly want to be a place where people of all abilities and needs feel comfortable walking and want to walk, we need to make it as easy as possible.
Do we hear a lot of complaints about that? I'm just asking, I don't feel like I hear a lot of complaints about the walkability of the town. Okay,
I think people can learn to not complain if they don't think that's effective. So I don't know that I would use it as like a standard. But I just pulled up, I'm looking at page 21. And one area that I think is also deficient further down is by the wellness center and where that trail starts. That's also one where if you're on the opposite side of the street, you're like in a wasteland to figure out how to get to that trail. And I think, again, there are opportunities there for then people to decide how they're gonna cross the street. And I mean, yeah. I don't know where it would go, but it just seems like if you have at the beginning of a trail, there should be something that gets you to the other side of the road. That's an obvious place. If we're talking about crosswalk behavior, whether it's part of this or something else.
So sorry for the thing of this project, that's out of the limits.
yeah,
Right, I guess we were talking about number of crosswalks on Baker.
I don't object to the crosswalk at Forest. I just think it needs to be, would be perpendicular. But
Question for Market, when we've done other RFP projects, this is my understanding that those are intended for mid-lot crossings.
Typically,
Is,
that's the original use of them, but they're all over it. Places that you want to cross. Busy streets.
yeah, they could be contrary, but historically, that's kind of how they started, but they are okay to do an intersection, especially if they have a ski like this and want to bring attention to it. That bigger picture discussion, although one thing you do need to, and I don't know the criteria off the top of my head, but there is, when it comes to the RFPs specifically, there is a spacing that you don't want to exceed. If they're ubiquitous, then they lose some of the value. So there is spacing standards where you want to use those. So we'll double check that. I don't foresee an issue at Forest, but if you're gonna then try to do another one that cuts it that way, they're getting too close together. But again, that's beyond one that's in this project, so.
Okay, well, there's a motion for the friendly amendment for 10-foot lanes, 10-foot travel lanes, 11-foot sign lane. The crosswalk to be at an angle at Forest and Baker. And that crosswalk to be decorative, consistent with what's on Central. I have that correct? Jamie, you're okay with the?
Yes.
On the decorative crosswalk. Originally, it was a motion for the option saying it can't be an option, so we're including it in the backup.
I think we'd have to include it as.
Yeah, we can include it, so what we would do is we have the detail, we just compared the one on Dexter and Arbor, so that all I have to do is basically put that detail in the plans and associated pay items. If the project, if the city wanted to make a determination to not do that, later we would just eliminate those pay items and pay through it by law. So it's not an optional separate category, it's the way I'm not set up, but we put it in there and then you can make a decision at a later time whether or not to be able to go.
That, so as my understanding, is included in there, and how much does the decorative crossing generally run? Been a while, I can't remember.
Probably the 30,000 range.
Okay, if this kicks us over a magic threshold with the MDOT bidding based on our previous engineering estimate, do we have the option to do this as the decorative crossing as a project at the same time? Coming from.
Well, that gets a little sticky with MDOT, probably not right at the same time, but you could come in right on the heels of the paving job. So what would most likely happen anyways, like the order of operation, whether it was included in this project or done later, is the contractor would mill and overlay the road, and then they would saw cut where the crossing goes, remove that area and pour the concrete flush up against that asphalt. So really the only, rework is the tonnage of that 2 inches in that crosswalk footprint, so, you could very easily do both that and RFPs and standalone project right on the heels of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Marcus, I appreciate the detail that you put on, the explanation on the comments and stuff that, you know, addressing memorandum. I personally like the 11, 13, 11. And that makes a lot of sense. Okay, seeing no further comments, George, please call the vote.
Sonnefair,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Hubbard,
Yes.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Black,
Yeah.
you.
No. Motion carries 5-1. New business item M2, discussion / consideration of public safety facilities planning process, timeline and direction on sheriff's office location.
So I guess I'll start. For the last couple of user group meetings for public safety facilities, there have been a few different items for discussion. Starting in order of the memo. We took out the proposal, which we expect to come back at the next meeting. The next thing is the location of the sheriff's substation. During our conversations at the user group. There was discussion about, you know, whether to include it at 8140 or at some other location. And the direction at the time was to proceed with design, incorporating it into 8140 with the understanding that we would continue looking at and evaluating other options or other locations for the sheriff's office. And based on some of our more recent conversations, that creates potential challenges as we get into kind of more firmer designs. Because the sheriff's office is such an integral piece of the design, taking it out later would potentially cause a significant rework on that of part of the architecture. And David has indicated that it would be better to try and firm that up as soon as possible, sooner rather than later, to assist with moving the design forward, and not having to take a step back at some later date. And so we wanted to bring that forward as a topic for city council. One of the potential locations that was discussed was this building in section 3, which we're already designing for temporary facilities for fire. David, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the kind of delta between removing that space from 8140 and adding it here was about 400,000.
In that range, yes.
In savings. And then there were other potential benefits like parking that the sheriff was advocating for. So we wanted to bring that back for city council discussion. And David, so
What, which one of these do you want to take first? The sheriff, the only one?
that's retreat part.
So, how much space is the sheriff?
About 1,500 square feet is it's laid out right now in the plan we last looked at together.
And the plan is based on about $450 a square foot?
458, right?
Okay, so That's almost $700,000 worth of cost.
Let me back up. When we last talked, that scheme was a two-story scheme above Main Street, and that was 428. As we last looked at it as a committee, a week ago, we were at a park level development and 2 stories above, and that moved the number up per square feet, foot to 458. So the math doesn't apply exactly to both schemes. So 670,000 square, $1,000, I guess, looking at both of them. Does that make sense? It's a different square foot cost. What we looked at on the 25th as compared to what we looked at as a community on the 3rd.
I'm trying to understand the delta that was just reported, but also in the backup.
The delta
So I'm starting with what we were gonna spend on the original contract, 600,000 or 700,000. On the sheriff, is that fair?
in that range, yeah. The delta was that we took that piece out of 8140, moved it here, just cost here. So the delta is what you spend here, and what you save there.
So what is it we're spending it on here?
It would be the upgrade of the 2-story component right behind us. To bring them in, and then site improvements as well for parking. It's not detailed out, but that was kind of the estimate that was discussed at the last meeting.
Does that include an elevator?
No. We would design it where an elevator would be required. The first responder, the segments of the building would be on the 2nd floor. Public interaction space would be on the accessible foot.
I guess I always envisioned that when we would do modifications to that side of the building, we'd have the elevator in case it was not always that used.
That'd be a safe and sorry kind of a move, but with the first responder use, you have the option of where it is occupied by a first responder not to include accessible components. And that's kind of what we put in the 2nd field. Oh, but similar to, as we've discussed, that 8140, the elevator that's been in the plans has been a public circulation enhancement piece. It's not required for fire or sheriff.
I just think it's important.
It is important. And in any case, the plan, whatever the plan is gonna need to accommodate that in the future. As the ease of construction and adding it if you do later on.
So what specific feedback are you looking for? Just are we okay with the general direction of?
I think they're ultimately trying to get to a set plan that they're basing their next phase of design on. And the question is whether that set plan includes sheriff at 8140 or elsewhere, and in this discussion, elsewhere is here.
Yeah, it's just a little more background, and Justin, I think, did a fair job of outlining a long discussion in a few words, but we met for about 2 hours last week as a committee. We went through the plans, we did a comprehensive plan, including the 3 options that we discussed on the meeting 25th here. Reviewed that with the idea that is the sheriff component gonna work there if you take it out later? And then looking at the critical path for scheduling, if we take that out later, it's could potentially throw a pretty good wrench into the critical path, which is getting all the winter sensitive construction items done by winter of 25. And if we have to reboot and start over, if we take that out, that could throw a pretty good complication into the timeline process. So that was part of it, in terms of why we wanted to answer that question sooner than later. The other was, optimizing the efficiency of the building. If we take out that 1,500 square feet, which represents about 35% of the footprint of the 2nd floor on Alpine, or about 25% of the overall footprint as it's Main Street. If you take that piece of the puzzle out, you kind of throw things out of balance. And just maybe as a perspective, the building's generally T-shaped, right? The apparatus base parallels to Main Street. operations, crew quarters, fire services and sheriffs are parallel to Alpine, that T shape. If we were to take that chunk of that 1,500 square foot chunk out of the element that goes along Alpine, the geometry could change, and the perspective I'd show as an example is if you take a 10,000 square foot building, that's not quite 10,000 square feet, but just for simplicity, 100 feet by 100 feet equals 10,000 square feet, a nice square geometry. If you take another building of a different shape, 200 feet times 50 feet, it equals 10,000 square feet, same exact kind of square footage. But if you add up the perimeter wall, 100 by 100, which is 400 linear feet of outside wall for the square, 200 plus 200 plus 50 plus 50 is 500 linear feet of a perimeter wall. About 20% more construction costs for that same exact square footage. About 20 to 30% operational efficiency, because your heat loss in the building is about 20 to 30% to that outside wall. So you're losing more energy because you have more perimeter wall. Operationally, you're more likely to get where you need to get in a building that's more square. The travel distance from an extreme in the square is less than it is to a rectangle. In fire services, a path to travel, shortest distance, time is the most important. So on three fronts, the operational efficiency, the energy efficiency, the cost of construction, you gain if we're looking at how that footprint changes if we take the sheriff out. If we look at it now, the critical path and timeline is preserved. We could meet that sensitive time frame of getting construction done before the winter. And so we have to reboot, and I would say February or whenever, we have to kind of go back to the starting blocks, because we now decided to put sheriff somewhere else, kind of starting over. And we have a solution that will work. It just won't be as efficient as possible if we make some important decisions now. But like I say, we have advanced the plan with the options that we were directed to do, and it will work simply by taking out the sheriff. At some point, another location is preferred. We just thought, well, let's just pause. We brought it up to the point we can. If there's a decision to be made, we can kind of shift gears or fork in the road now versus later.
So the sheriff would stay at 8140 from now until what date?
Early part of the year, let's say in our March range. Yeah.
And then they would come over here
Along with fire.
along fire.
Yeah. And then the demos will begin in early spring, March, April.
Yep. So then once the fire station is built,
Fire goes back.
fire goes back.
Then this portion of the building gets constructed to meet the sheriff's needs.
And the sheriff would be going to bring that time.
If it's here, we're revisioning some two-story section next to it.
No, but where are they going while you're renovating that?
So during the first set of moving, we'd be setting up in a couple offices on the second floor in the city administration wing in section 1.
We'd have a temporary office here that would just basically be computers and workstations. And the deputies would actually start working on a SIO because of the infrastructure that we have there, reference car downloads and vehicle downloads and all of that. And so then that way they just basically change their, hop in their car, come up here and then do their work here. But there's certain things that we need permanent structure for that you couldn't necessarily accommodate temporarily. And that's why when with the secondary build on the back half, all those infrastructure then be built in at that point.
Yes, I was looking for a little understanding the timeline and the writing. I didn't see that.
I just want to confirm Lieutenant Hunt, so now had included her email, her assessment of your perception of the two options, and her take was that you thought it was perhaps more favorable to be here permanently than 80/40. So I just, if you wanted to speak to that.
No, for sure. So operationally, like especially parking at the current location at 8140 is extremely challenging for us as it is. We're shuffling back and forth with fire and with all the new designs that we've come up with the planning. every single plan reduces that parking footprint. And so both for operational patrol vehicles and then personal vehicles. So currently, we're looking at a couple of potentials. If we have everybody together at 8140, we would have with 5 parking places out front on Alpine and 4 patrol cars and then 5 for personal vehicles. However, every purpose-built police station that you go to has our personal vehicles are totally separate from public avenues. And one reason is like we've had some of our vehicles damaged in Manchester where we have to share the township parking lot. We've had people actually damage vehicles. And so we try, like for our staff, we'd like to have things separate. Plus, we're also moving sensitive equipment, including weapons, back and forth between personal vehicles, patrol vehicles, all those kind of things. Having things in a public setting becomes kind of a safety issue for us and a concern, on top of personal vehicle damage and things like that we have to worry about. So our staff regularly complain about the parking that we had at multiple of our sites just because of the nature of how they are. And if we come up with an option, and basically, which was what we were discussing, just operational between the fire department, where are you gonna put your cars, where are we gonna put our cars, especially a shift change, how does that work out? How do we shuffle all these vehicles around? How do we move equipment back and forth? Just operationally, it becomes very challenging, especially if we're forced into the parking lot at the rear of the building with the park where we're sharing, we've got like, especially when we're adding the bathrooms and the elevator and all that, you create a natural line of drift for people moving in and around our personal equipment on a regular basis, which again, for us, we like that separation. So if we have an option to create separation, that's when, you know, the thought process was, well, what if we could go to a different place, a different location, that way you can separate X, Y, Z. The other thing that I see as an operational benefit for us, potentially being in this building, is the communication side, directly with the city officials, being able to have that direct contact on more of a daily basis, I think creates some definite pluses for us and for you. So, but those are some of the concerns that kind of came up, just operationally, it's gonna become crazy game of Jenga, moving around our vehicles, plus the safety concerns that we do have, whether we're parking, I don't know, whether we're parking in the public parking lot, basically. Because we're gonna lose our space. Right now, even where we're at Main Street up front is not ideal for us. But it's the best of the 3 options at this point, is what we have to deal with, so it's what we deal with.
And then just so day to day, how often is somebody like physically sitting at the site for an extended period of time? Like just
As far as a deputy
Yeah.
in the building,
Right.
it varies. Sometimes they might not be there at all during the day, and other times they might be there for a significant portion of the day. It really varies. Like at the beginning of the, like during shift change, there's always gonna be people moving back and forth. But it really varies on what their duties are, because if they're not writing a report or doing some sort of follow-up at the station, they should be out on the street someplace finding something else to do productively.
David, you know, what is the space square footage over there?
Currently, 400 square feet per chair.
But over here? No, right here.
That's probably, I don't have the square footage on the top of my head on what that is. My guess would be 1,800 square feet, the first and second, in that range.
For the design team, I will throw out there that, although we're paying to build the building, we only pay for the cost to heat it, so use electric baseboard heaters if you want. They cost on that, which is an issue I've raised with at the AFD board meetings, that there's a disincentive for us to put highly efficient systems because our return on investment is triple, right? I would say even if code allows us to not provide disability access to portions of the facility that we have an obligation to do so. I'm not sure if any of the kids who came in for the meeting had disability issues, but imagine you're the kid in the wheelchair and you can't tour the police station because you're in the wheelchair or you walk with crutches or whatever. Additionally, from a practical standpoint, you can be on a chase and you tweak your knee. Now you can't do your stuff anymore here. You can't, because it's hard. So I'd say if we're gonna have multi-story, it has to have the elevator for it. With this site, I am I raised this before, but I'm also concerned about the railroad right here. If the train derails or stops and we need a response, it blocks off the office from the rest of the town. And also if there's derailment with some chemicals, it takes this facility out. Now, there is the close facility in Sile, which would provide support, but I'm a planner, I worry about things that happen in the state of decades. I would also raise the question of visibility. During discussions, it was raised that we had to have it at the police station, a highly visible state location. And we even had a letter from a Cub Scout that said driving into town, seeing it downtown was comfortable for him, that allows suppressing crime in downtown along the trail. And this location would lose it. Also with visibility, as touched here, I have concerns about, it's really dark out here now. If we don't have secure parking for the police vehicles and for staff, if you're the one person doing a shift change here and someone's really pissed off because you served a warrant on them, there's a lot of opportunity, not a lot of eyeballs in yours here.
I would still rather be here than there, to be honest with you. From my personal safety security perspective.
That's it, thank you.
Also, we might have a substation or hotel Hilton one.
Back to the future.
Okay, so we'll have a lot of detail in the packet, so I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions. What are you looking for, general motion from somebody that says we're gonna move or not move the chair?
Yeah, that'd be the most straightforward.
I mean, I guess what I don't understand is they just build the space. I know that whole 25, what about 550, which is 100 there. I mean, if we build the space, it's, I mean, sheriff's offices, if the right box doesn't just become a training room or something. Another need that the fire department needed.
It's one of the things we've removed from the program, so I'm sure it'd be welcome.
Wondering how difficult to change that really is.
It isn't, it's just moving the cost, that's all. And the cost becomes cheaper. That was another thought, it wasn't the motivation to put me in, it really was a.
But no, I like that idea of saving dollars, because there's other things I want to do, I mean, at the lower level and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the perspective from several people were different. The sheriff had it sounded like up the ladder and below, thought this was their preference. That really initiated some pretty robust conversation. The other thing was, the critical path from the schedule standpoint, with the CM saying, hey, if we don't get construction going somewhere in June, on-site real, at the very latest, we want to start like in March. We're going to be pressing against winter conditions on next facility spending money, so that was the other part. And then the operational energy efficiency and just, optimizing the layout was the other thing. I don't know how you want to put those in priorities, but those were the three really big things that made us say, we've advanced this direction to a point where we've included all the options. We have 3 or 4 more days before we get here, and we kind of asked the question, because we were in 50 gears to full speed. We're producing what we all last looked at on the 25th, unless we hear otherwise. And if we want to go backwards, we can avoid it, that's all.
Understand, I'm just trying to understand, I mean, we use that space for election. Break room, I'm trying to understand what space the sheriff really needs. I mean, the upstairs seems to me to be like probably 1,000 square feet. The upstairs.
I missed what you said.
I'm trying to figure out how much space we actually would need to convert here. I mean, is there a possibility to put the sheriff on the second floor and maintain the lower level? If that's at all an option that could be looked at, I'm open to looking at options. I just want to know how far along in the thought process we are, we're giving up, because there's a pros and cons to this too. I mean,
of course, and as far as I've gotten is that temporary forest for fire is going to cause some construction to happen. That was going to be removed when they left. But if we did it in such a way, I thought we could do first floor in the next section, second floor in the next section. Continue the construction that was temporary fire and give you a pathway from here to that end room, so that would remain city functioning space. And then only the two-story section could be sheriff. I didn't think about it from the standpoint of, could we put sheriff only on second floor? If we did that, obviously an elevator would be necessary, that's not an option at that point. But I didn't really look at that at all. But we didn't go into, let's figure out a plan. We just said, well, let's ask the question about, is that something that seems like a direction we want to look at now, or somewhere in the future?
Joe?
One of the things that you mentioned about the trade group. So if you were gonna look at this to design without the sheriff station, would we still have the option for the training room in the future?
Of course, yes.
So it'd be something similar, like a stepped building with an area that would be, could be built up in the future.
My answer, of course, yes, is we planned it in there somehow. I'm not sure it would be a step situation, but if the directive was, let's make sure we can accommodate training in the future, whatever the plan is, we have that. I don't know exactly what the solution is, but it would be in the solution. But if it were to stay just like it is with cruising operation on the Main Street floor, just like it is, it would definitely be a step situation. But I would look at pulling stuff from the first floor, fitness as an example, to the second floor, trying to mirror the floor plates so we get as much, I'll say optimization as possible. Would it work? I don't know. That's the direction I would go.
Okay, so we've done a lot of discussion. Anybody want to make a motion about the sheriff, one way or the other?
I like that meeting, move forward with the design where we relocate the sheriff's substation to another location. Other than 8140.
Which reduces the square footage of.
Yeah, to reduce the cost and square footage of the proposed design.
I'll second. So first, second, question. Any discussion on that? Second, Jamie, please.
Just to clarify, if the location that's not on Main isn't here or the DPW facility, we're $1 million max that we can spend towards it, correct? Because our bond is limited to those three addresses.
Yeah, if we use the bond to pay for it, yeah. We could be able to do it, I suppose, right?
Well, we have $1 million of our cash that we're throwing in the pot.
Yeah.
That's not restricted funds.
Right.
That's it.
So I just want to clarify that we're not locating the sheriff here by that motion.
It's not definite until, the way I understand it is, it's an option, but it's not, and it's not the only option, so you're off there, right?
Right, I think in the discussions that we had last Tuesday, this location was one location that was discussed as a possibility and probably a good possibility. But I think it's premature to pick a spot until there's a little bit more investigation. I mean, maybe it will be that that's the, that ends up being the best option or a very good option, but I don't know, we'll do that.
I think what it does is it helps him continue to go forward on fire, but sort of leaves the same question that Sanam asked last time about studying what the options would be for sheriff other than there.
Right, I guess I'm not gonna support it. I would want to do the full set of options.
More info.
Yeah,
Okay.
just for that reason alone. I mean, it seems like this would be a good location, but I don't like the idea of tying our hands or moving in a direction before we have all the information. Although I appreciate the time sensitivity.
This doesn't do that, right? I mean, yeah, maybe he comes back with that plan as an option, but that doesn't mean that we can't vote that down, when he comes back and say, go find another option. It's not tying our hands.
I don't feel comfortable supporting moving in a direction that is insufficiently informed.
feel comfortable trying to make this, move forward with the process down the timeline that we have, so.
And that's why even I can go differently, and that's okay.
I'm not having a conversation. Yeah.
So. What could you have? For next meeting? What is it that you, knowing if we were to pass this motion? What would you be bringing back to us, the revised concept of 8140?
Yeah, that'd be the next step.
And that's what we plan to have the contract? Will you be updating the cost estimate?
I think we can have that done in the same format that the committee has been working. It won't be, I don't want to speak for between him and Limp Group, but I don't think they'll have sufficient time based on what I think I can finish to turn around and have it to you in the same format they have done before. But we can give you the summary, estimates, like the committee has been looking at between now and then.
I just think that anytime we make a change that where it's affecting hundreds of thousands, we should have a cost estimate, so we know what we're either gaining or saving or able to reapply somewhere else.
Yeah, I totally get it.
Especially since there's those items 1, 3, and 4 that had some of them had some decent dollars signed to them at the last meeting, right?
Absolutely, and I totally get what you're saying, and there's more information.
Even if it's a range guess for the update, I think it's a good carry the contest because we're going forward.
And that's what I meant by the same format that the committee has been getting. We haven't done like detailed estimates. It's been, here's kind of where it's moving towards. And it's, it's a good range. I got a comfort range, but it's not absolute. And I didn't want to overcommit. I mean, if we're meeting in 2 weeks, I assume that's the next meeting. That's a pretty tall order, and what needs to happen in between now and then is the committee has to look at.
My recommendation, you guys meet right after these meetings, not right before that.
Well, we meet
Before the back.
Yeah, we meet on Tuesday, so.
Yeah, it should be tomorrow, Tuesday, and not the next Tuesday.
Right, and then there's a response time that goes into that, and
Okay, George, we have a motion and a second. Can you read me back what you have as a motion, please?
Motion to direct Architects and Architecture to consider the relocation of Eric's office to locations other than 8140 Main Street.
Second by Bob. Please call that vote.
Michelle,
Well,
Hubbard. Yes. Sonnefair,
Yes.
Schlaf.
yes.
Griffin. No. Keel.
Yes. Okay, the motion carried. Here's the next topic, and it's more.
The next topic is, and I'll leave Michelle called with this one. Staff took, the, PUD revision for, this facility, to planning commission. And, planning commission indicated that, they felt that a different process was required than staff felt, going into it. That, rather than starting at final, PUD, approval or a PUD amendment, we needed to go back to, preliminary conceptual, PUD. Which at that point, we have to go planning commission, city council for conceptual, and then planning commission, council for combined preliminary and final PUD. Along with that, there are other pieces that are gonna be required for the site plan, including a full, survey and site plan development. All of which impact the intended schedule for groundbreaking in the spring. there are options that council has, if there is an interest. To waive some or all requirements that the city would otherwise require of private developers. Michelle, is there anything that I missed that you wanna help me out with?
No, I think you summarized it quite nicely, Justin. The one thing that we'll have to figure out, or council will have to figure out, is if they, well, you haven't really gone into the, I'm sorry, you haven't gone into the feedback out that Scott provided, right?
Not yet.
Okay, then maybe I better just wait to comment until you've done that. Sorry.
Joe? I was looking at the timeline, 233. Let me ask you, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong. It looks like the dates that are next to the items are shifted a month out, like in December 23, the dates are for the PC meeting and council meeting in November.
Yeah, they did. That was a mistake on my part. We had to add time into it. Oh, I'm trying to remember what it was that hadn't been accounted for. But it did shift. It did shift out 2 months. There has to be time. There has to be, if you're going to follow your ordinances, have to be able to provide time for OHM to do their survey work, get a proposal to you first, and then do their survey work and prepare the documentation. And that would push things out. And that's why it shows the wrong dates. The conceptual plan would be in December, but the number dates are not correct. You're right, Joe.
Oh, so you basically inserted a block and shifted everything to the right.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
No, just clarification.
So, is this why Scott was last meeting?
It was. In case, I was not fully prepared to speak to kind of what happened at planning commission, and so I invited Scott to come in case that it came up at the last council meeting.
So, we were talking numerous times about the importance of making sure that we keep our city protected during the construction of the new station. And I personally feel like whatever we have to do to have a temporary station makes a lot of sense, but that's an essential service. I'm okay with this. Without waiving the planning. I mean, frankly, if planning were to come back and recommend not doing it, I'm not gonna take that recommendation. And we're gonna recommend the body in this case. I don't know how everybody else feels, but we need to keep this moving forward. I think we all have said we want to make sure we have fire protection in the city during the construction, and if we need time to make that happen, I think it's in everybody's best interest that we keep moving forward. I would encourage a motion to waive the ordinance department. If it seems to be allowed by the state law. Okay.
Yeah, I won't support that direction. And again, I'm saying this because I feel like as a council member, it's my obligation to share with you why I will or will not support a certain direction. Because when that's not been done and it's been shared later, comments have been made to say, well, I wish you would have said that when we were talking about that item. So what are you doing now? I think there are plenty of people in this community who are watching this process very closely. And I think a significant amount of trust has been lost as a result of the way certain things have gone down. And I'm not looking to to give the public any more reason to be critical of the direction. If we have an opportunity to follow our proper processes and procedures, I mean, I think we have that obligation.
By the way, I think that we're still gonna need to make an amendment to put the sheriff here probably. So I still think we're gonna have a proposal for the survey, and whatever timeline that takes, if that's the direction we're gonna go, and I don't only have to make that decision. I still think we should go around getting a proposal going, because any of those long lead items, we should have ready to go, and when we make a decision on location.
And then,
I'm not saying that there won't be a future process like that, but I don't see the need to have that delay built in. I don't, maybe I know what to do with that. That's fine, I'm gonna let council talk first. Zach, and then go.
I believe we spent, between us, the planning commission consultants and staff, 2 to 3 years preparing our zoning ordinance. I believe it's a very bad look once you cross that Rubicon and said, this is for thee, but not for us. It makes me sick when Congress exempts itself from its own laws and they've got all that mischief going on and the Supreme Court does it. It's a very bad luck, but that's just my take on it. I will say my project in my house, the cost of that project was increased by 20% for my requirement as a private property owner to secure a survey. Now, I'm not going to go in details, but I had to pay an extra 20%, and now I'm looking at the city saying, screw it, no survey, we're just going to go bid. We're just going to put the shovel. When we did that with the DPW facility, we put all the parking lot on property that we don't own. So in addition to the bad luck and forcing other people, this individual homeowner property owners to spend money and take time that we are exempting ourselves from, it causes very real problems. What if the Michigan Department of Rail said, nope, we're not giving you the easement, figure out how to use helicopters to get your trucks in and out. I would also recommend that the council, so I'm most familiar with the Petoskey case that was referenced there, and the facts of case law are really important. In that case, and the others I believe too, it was very clearly a governmental purpose, which is different from a proprietary interest. So in the case of Petoskey, it was the city of Petoskey Fire Department. It was the city, an arm of the city that was doing that. Also, council SEL may want to refresh all the cases are pre-2006. The reason why that's important is that's when the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act was codified. There used to be a separate city and village and township and county act. When it was codified and the new one was adopted, there's a specific section in there, 125.3 something that lists all the things that are exempted from zoning ordinances. It did not codify this case. That means it's still open for case law. There are the 3 cases there, but that's all.
Thank you. Joe, do you have anything?
I was just gonna, I think Michelle started to talk about the memo and wait for feedback.
Oh, okay. So then I hear from the Joe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so
Michelle?
Yes?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you had called me Sean or not. The audio sometimes cuts in and out. My apologies. I know that we don't have anything in our ordinance. I know that you've spoken with Matt Kowalski, our chair of the Planning Commission. He's very familiar with Ann Arbor's processes, and in their zoning ordinance, they exclude the city or city projects from following the ordinance. Whatever council decides, and we'll go forward. Excuse me. I would suggest, though, that if you do go forward, that we do amend our zoning ordinance so that any cases going forward, if you need it, that it's already done. The other thing you're still, regardless of whether the sheriff's station happens here or not, you're still going to need all of the surveys that are listed, because all of that documentation is going to be needed for the zoning compliance that permit that has to be issued in order to get your building permits, unless you're going to not do that. And then I'd have to work with the building department to figure out how we do that in this case.
Don't they have a survey? We're talking about a legal description survey, don't we have that?
A survey of the property here, of the 3515.
Yeah,
There is a survey that was done by the last owner previous before the city. That was MedHub. But the changes that are being made have to be done per our ordinance on a survey that's prepared, signed, and sealed by a licensed engineer or a surveyor. Whether that's temporary or permanent. The temporary fire station has a structure that's temporary, and that in itself, along with the need to show turning radiuses, parking, etc., that triggers having the survey. If everything is done I'm shifting gears now. If we talk about the fire station, the sheriff's station only, if that's a decision that council makes, those changes are primarily going to be internal. So it's just the architectural construction plans, unless there is dedicated parking that's identified on site for the sheriff.
Go.
Michelle, how the timeline that's on 233, how would that change if? I'm trying to figure out what would be the process if we were to change and we did not do planning commission approval.
So if we're talking about the temporary, what you would have is you're only going to be working on what's needed in order to get building permits. So your timeline gets expedited to where you're probably looking at December for a submittal for zoning compliance permits in order to get your building permits. So you've taken where it would have said in December to do conceptual. If you're taking out the entire planning commission council process from conceptual to the end, you're actually starting, where is it? See in March where it says ZC and BP?
Yeah.
That moves to December.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I move on the temporary fire station. We move forward for the information from council and proceed without going through the planning commission.
There's a second.
Could I make a suggestion, please?
Yeah.
I would, unless the city attorney has a reason why we shouldn't do it this way, wouldn't it just be best to say you're exempting the temporary fire station from the zoning ordinance, because it's a primary government function, or the language that he used.
Thank you, that's, right, yeah.
Thank you. It was motioned by Tom Rose, is there a second? I'll second. Okay, everybody in? Did you get that, Jordan?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I just pulled up the Ann Arbor code out of curiosity. And I did note that they said essential services or buildings or structures, blah, blah, blah. They're also required to comply with soil erosion and sedimentation control requirements. Just to let you know that it's not like there's a complete exemption, that they do call out some specific parts of their ordinance.
I just want to say that before I get accused of walking and voting in lockstep with anyone at this table ever again, I have a mind of my own. No one at this table tells me what to do, and I will be supporting this because I believe, as I said, that we need to move forward, get things done on an appropriate timeline. And yes, this is not necessarily the black and white procedure that some other people at this table think needs to be followed. Government, I mean, it's not everything is black and white. And I respect the public, but I am of the mind that the public does not need to be involved in every bit of minutia of what we do at this table. We are elected to make decisions, and that is why I think we need to just keep moving forward. Yeah.
Griffin? No. Sunfera?
Yes.
Flat?
Yeah.
Michelle's?
No.
Here.
Yes. Motion carries 4-2. Is there any other direction we need to discuss under this?
Not with time.
Okay, so David, you're gonna bring us back next meeting. A concept in relation to the first motion that we made that doesn't have the space for the sheriff.
Right.
At 8140. And the best we can for updated cost estimate.
Yeah, we'll have something in some reform that indicates what that is.
Okay, and then the second. Thing is the contract. We'll have the contract.
Yeah, I think we're almost there. We kind of walked through the questions that were open today.
Okay, thank you. Okay, new business item, M4, I'm gonna step out since we deleted M3, discussion of direction for the 850 Main Street. Sheriff's, property.
I'll kick this off again. As the council is aware, or maybe aware, the now former owner of Port Huffman, decided to, close the business at, city-owned property at 8050 Main Street, right near Main Central. With that vacation, the question is, do we as a city want to continue to move forward with leasing that building out to a private entity for another private business? Or is there some other use that council would like to see explored? If we move forward with leasing it out again for another business, I think the recommendation that we would go with is to, number one, get the building cleaned, which we're in the process of doing now. Two, have the building evaluated by our partners. And then three, proceed with any work that may need to be done to bring the building forward in, improvements. And then issue a request for proposals from business entities that might be interested in leasing that space. there's some other option that council wants to explore, we're happy to take a look at that as well.
Jamie?
I'm not in favor of the city continuing to lease property, I guess. I don't think we should really be in the business of real estate. I don't know if the Dexter Historical Society has any interest in the building. It seems to me, I mean, one reason people like the building staying in city ownership was to preserve the historic character of it. I don't really, I mean, it would be nice to know what the value, if we were to sell it, would be. And we've seen that recently. Is that in here?
I don't think we have a dollar value associated with it.
I'd be curious to know that, I guess. I'd be curious to know if the historical society has any interest in it, or if we're gonna preserve it. I think that we should use it for its, I don't know, enhance its historic nature as opposed to just repurpose it for something else.
I do know that, I mean, I think the Historical Society has put a lot of attention and focus into Gordon Hall. I don't know if there's any further interest in other historical properties, but if that's an interest we can add.
Yeah. So, I don't know, go ahead.
I'd like to know if we inherited any master deed or if there's any deed restrictions with this. If we were gonna continue to own it, I'd like that it's for public use such as restrooms. I don't like the city acting as a landlord. It's not a business incubator. The business is there for 8 years and then doesn't move on and grow. I'd rather our staff spend time doing other things than acting as a landlord. If we do sell it, we have a lot of options to ensure preservation, such as deed restrictions and requiring that we have the first right of refusal and all those types of fancy tools. That's my 2 bits.
All good, but
Would council like to have to come back with and deeper dive in each of those options?
Sure.
Okay, so, you know, what would the potential value be to sell? What are the potential costs to convert it into public restrooms? I think the Historical Society and investigating potential deed restrictions or other potential issues with selling property.
yeah,
I mean, is the property big enough for the sheriff's department? I don't.
If I could,
I know, I remember, I was been here a long time.
we go up.
What's that? Well, you can quick, I know.
Adele?
so I heard Dan's question, and I know that there's a chuckle that reverberates throughout the room because Sheriff did occupy that building for a spell. The things that council may want to remember, the building is in the central business district, which means you don't have setbacks. So the building could be expanded if you didn't want to take it down. The parking lot behind the property is a DDA lot. If there is reconfiguration that might be needed or additional parking needed, there could be ways to discuss the gravel lot that's next door with the property owner that owns that building, or that owns that lot, and that's the building that's right next door. So while it might have been a tongue-in-cheek question that Dan asked. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It just depends on what, what council, if that's the direction you want to go, and how much you want to spend ultimately on the building and on the fire station or on the police station.
Why don't you investigate in those things and bring back some more information? We get some back to them and not something.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason I didn't have more information, I want to get helpful thoughts on potential directions for doing a deep dive.
I'm not against losing that, by the way, don't fit. Spend a nice business method of extending that in here. So,
To the point, Councilmember Shelsley, it was talked about, I know Donna Fisher mentioned a couple times about it being something of an incubator, but if that's the case, it should be with some restraint, like you would tell whoever the business
a
is.
limited term.
Yeah, we're gonna do one lease that's 2 years or 3 years, and after that point, we're not renewing the lease, so figure out what you're gonna do. It's good with that, you're gonna use it as that type of a thing, it should be 10 or 12 years.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to item number 5, which was K4, consideration of the retiree health file agreement.
Improvement of the agreement.
You move into the agreement? Yep. Thank you, Mr. Michelle, is there a second? That, I'll go with Durgan. Okay. Thank you, Joe, and James. Okay, Zach, you have the question?
Yep, first, congratulations to Mr. Gross. My first question is, has our council, SEL, looked at the agreement, did they offer any comments?
Scott Elder did look at the agreement and did offer comment, which was incorporated.
All right, and gonna ask a dumb question now. This is beneficial for him because it allows him access to his money ahead of time, and it's beneficial for us because we spend less over time.
Correct.
We all know this, but for folks who may be watching and listening, it's important for them to know why. The $40,000 payment this year, do we need to do a budget amendment in order to accommodate that, or we got money available budgeted already?
So we have money budgeted to contribute towards retiree healthcare fund.
So instead of going into the fund, it'll go towards this.
Correct.
And for future years, will it be the same, or will we incorporate the 40,000 the next 2 years?
I think the plan would be to incorporate it in the same manner.
Okay. I'm over, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Director, please call the roll.
Sniper,
Yeah.
Black,
Yeah.
Schultz,
Yes.
Hubbard. Yes. Keo.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Wait.
Burton.
Yeah.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. We're back around to non-arranged participation. Is there anyone online that would like to speak this evening? So please raise the hand. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak this evening? Okay, we're down to council comments. I'll start with our remaining student rep. Glenn.
I guess, that today's a good start to our season, and, that's it, exciting fall season.
Great.
Oh, and homecoming too.
What's that?
Homecoming, we won the game, I did. I wasn't there.
The parade was very nice, actually.
Yeah,
Very good.
Was the dance not in the tent?
the people went, for sure, and it was enjoyable for some. They made us pay for water. That was it. That was the main complaint I've heard.
Joe?
I do not have any comments, thank you.
Ms. Hubbard? Mr. Michelle?
So happy Columbus Day or Indigenous to Peoples Day, depending on if you grew up with a cell phone or not. I will share this little bit. I grew up right next to the Saginaw Chippewa Indian Tribe, which is one of the largest ones. But the area that became Dexter was seeded from the Chippewa, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Wyandotte Indians on November 1807 as part of the Detroit Treaty. So kind of a long way back for us, but not that long way back in the course of human history. And growing up there, I always try to, this is part of the culture there, but you're a steward of the land. You're not, it's not yours, you're taking care of it. That's a fun thing about growing up there. If you are interested, the Dexter water tank, go to tankoftheyear.com. There's a bunch of water tanks there across the country that you can vote for. That might be good to put out on our little flyer too, so we can get all the local votes on there.
Sorry, is that, what was that address?
Tankoftheyear.com. Unrelated to anything in Ukraine, it's water tanks. And folks may be curious, why is Zach so insane about roads? Well, I've been in the design space since 1995. It's important in architecture how buildings interact with the public space, urban design, urban planning, how municipality, the shape of the street. That's the most prominent public space in American cities. Once we've touched Baker Road, it's probably not going to be touched this section in a significant way for at least 20 years, if you look at how long the road plays out. That's a long time. That impacts a lot of people a lot. And again, if you're over 55, statistically, you're probably going to be dead by the time we touch it. So it's a long time. Not every, that's just what the actuaries have, but so that's why I am a bit insane on roads, because it's very important to the public space and you don't get a lot of opportunity to touch it. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to thank, Mr. Haley for his comments earlier.
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay. We have our proposed agenda for future meeting, Joe brought up dedicating an index across stuff for internet access. Our staff needs to prepare some information for it, so I don't know if we have a set meeting for that necessarily, but we're holding that in May. At any one time, we can vote up or down and move that forward or not, but it's going to stay there until it comes new on the agenda. I seek a motion to adjourn. And that's 17. Oh, Zach, all right.
I also went on to propose agenda items for future meetings is train quiet zones. There is a process through which you can get your crossings exempted from having to blow the horns 3 times. It would be kind of sad because my puppy dog likes to sing with the horns, but they're also very loud. So it'd be good to get information. Again, not time pressing, but
very expensive, right? For the community.
well, it depends how many crossings. When I was poking around, it can be as low as 30,000 per crossing, depending on the treatment you have to do.
For adjournment 17, all those in favor?
Hi.
I was waiting for.
I'm gonna do it during. Oh, no, sorry.
Thank you, Tammy, and who's second? Yeah, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Have a great week, everyone.